Chapter 1438. The Wang clan master's face was solemn, and the lord of the Holy Saint Temple was quite anxious. The mistress of the greatest saint Lady Temple was shocked. She had personally sent the saint herself. If anything happened to her, the greatest saint Lady Temple would inevitably suffer a heavy blow. At least they would not be able to compete for the position of sect leader within this term, and all their previous preparations would be for naught. It doesn't make sense. The Wang clan master pondered. It is possible for one of them to be in danger in the dream, but the three of them entered different dreams. How could they be hurt at the same time? Something must have happened that we did not expect. The lord of the Holy Saint Temple looked annoyed. Why didn't you say earlier that there would be danger in the dream? The Wang clan master glanced at him. The probability of this happening is extremely low. Usually, before they are hurt, they can exit the dream with a thought. It will never happen like this. They seem to be trapped in the dream by some kind of power. The lord of the Holy Saint Temple was still angry, but the mistress of the greatest Saint Lady Temple was calmer than him. She calmly said, "Wang clan master, is there any way to wake them up?" This was the top priority. Everyone was also anxious as they stared at the Wang clan master. He knew the red dust dream the best, and perhaps there was a special way. However, all they got was the Wang clan master gently shaking his head. They are trapped in the dream, and we can't wake them up with external forces. If we force it, we will end up, like I said, in a coma forever. Hearing this, everyone present gasped. Did this mean that the three of them were doomed? It is impossible to wake them up, but there is a way to save them. The Wang clan master said, "If a fourth person enters the dream and helps them quell the danger, they will be safe." Hearing this, everyone was happy at first, but then their hearts sank. They had seen the difficulty of the test with their own eyes. All the suitable people present had tried, and they had barely managed to gather 3 people. Now, where could they find a fourth person? Moreover, this fourth person must have strength higher than the other 3. Otherwise, it would be useless. Where could they find such a person now? A desperate atmosphere descended upon the temple. ZZ. At this moment, a slight trembling sound reverberated in the corner without attracting attention. But everyone present was so worried that no one noticed this slight change. We can only resign ourselves to fate. The Wang clan leader was silent for a long time. He sighed deeply and looked at the increasing number of black threads in the fog on the foreheads of the 3 people. He felt even more regretful. The mistress of the greatest Saint Lady Temple sat down dejectedly. Her old face was filled with sorrow, and she seemed to have aged 10 years. After going through so much, they had finally managed to overcome the suppression of the sanctum of sages, and they finally had a chance to compete fairly with one another. Yet they had ended up in such a state. Recalling her life's hard work, the mistress of the greatest Saint Lady Temple suddenly felt tired. With a sigh, she slowly closed her eyes, as if she was about to fall into a deep sleep again. The lord of the Holy Saint Temple also sighed and complained. If I had known, I wouldn't have been so anxious. What he regretted was mostly the red dust eyes, not Zhang Lin's life. It was because of this that a young man inadvertently glanced at Suyu. He was immediately stunned, and he rubbed his eyes in disbelief. After he confirmed it, he cried out involuntarily, Look at Suyu. H's halo actually surpassed the 4th notch." What? As soon as these words came out, it was tantamount to a clap of thunder, exploding in the silent world. Everyone fixed their eyes on him, and sure enough, they saw that the bronze ruler in Suyu's palm had reacted. A pink halo was born, and without them noticing, it had surpassed the 4th notch. What? The mistress of the greatest Saint Lady Temple, who had just fallen into a deep sleep, immediately woke up as if she had heard great news. She sat up abruptly and walked straight to Suyu. She stared at the ruler, and a touch of excitement appeared on her old face. "Xue can be saved." The Wang clan leader had a strange look on his face. He kept looking at the ruler and hesitated. Pink halo? It's really unheard of. The halos that were born in the records were mostly pale yellow. This was the first time that a pink halo had appeared. Who cares what color it is, as long as this kid meets the requirements of the red dust dreams? The Lord of the Holy Saint Temple's face lit up with a glimmer of hope. His strength was higher than the three of them, and he had the qualifications of the red dust dreams. Wasn't Suyu just right? Wang Qingchen breathed a sigh of relief. But after hearing the words of the Lord of the Holy Saint Temple, he sneered. Who said just now that we don't count on Suyu? Who said that only our own people can be relied on in times of trouble? Who said that it was a waste of time for Suyu to continue testing, and suggested that he be woken up? Now you're grateful for his kindness? Many people felt injustice for Suyu and whispered to each other, Hey, when it comes to shamelessness, the Lord of the Holy Saint Temple is second only to Chu Long of the Chu clan. You don't even look at his face. When he was afraid of Suyu, he slandered him, and when he needed Suyu, he shamelessly praised him. He really speaks the truth when he sees it. The Lord of the Holy Saint Temple sneered at their criticism. Anyway, as long as Suyu could save Zhenglin, why should he care about what others said? The mistress of the greatest Saint Lady Temple said, Wang clan leader, does this pink halo also represent the compatibility with the red dust dreams? The Wang clan leader nodded slightly. Of course. Although I don't know what the pink halo means, it has crossed the 4th notch, which means that it fully meets the requirements of the red dust dreams. Wait. Suddenly, the Wang clan leader's eyes narrowed. This halo has not stopped. Everyone was shocked and looked at it. The pink halo was indeed moving forward slowly at a weak speed. After 10 breaths, amidst a burst of exclamations, the 5th notch was broken. The 5th notch. The Wang clan leader was surprised. This boy's soul power should not be able to reach such a level. The only possibility is that he has too many emotional fetters. Look, it's speeding up. The crowd exclaimed again. After the pink halo passed the 5th notch, its speed did not slow down, but increased. In just a few breaths, it soared to the 6th notch. Such a strange scene. Even the Wang clan leader was at a loss. How could this be? Whoosh! There was a soft sound, and the pink halo broke through the 6th notch. Moreover, its speed continued to soar. The audience was silent, and everyone was dumbfounded. Compared with the difficulty of the previous examinees, Suyu's test was simply nature-defying. They even suspected that the 2 tests weren't the same. Whoosh! There was another soft sound, and the 7th notch was also surpassed. The Wang clan leader's pupils widened, and he stared at the scene in front of him in disbelief. However, the halo did not stop, but continued to soar at a faster speed. The 8th notch! Someone screamed. At this moment, even the Wang clan leader could not help but gasp. The ancestor who refined the red dust dream achieved the highest degree of compatibility. However, what really horrified him was that the speed of the pink halo did not slow down, but increased and continued to go up. If it went up, it would be the 9th notch that no one had reached. Whoosh! With a soft sound like a silver bell, the 9th notch was surpassed. The pink halo rushed straight out of the ruler, turned into a bright pink mark, fell on the back of Suyu's hand, and condensed into the shape of a pink cloud. The 9th notch. The Wang clan leader's voice could not help but tremble. An unprecedented wonder appeared in front of him, and even with his submission, he could not help but be excited. Even the ancestor had not reached the degree of compatibility, but a person from the God realm had achieved it. The audience was silent, staring at the scene in front of them in shock. The slight tingling in his back caused Suyu to gradually wake up, his eyes still lingering with longing. His deepest feelings were for Xian'er and Xia Jingyu. Xian'er was close to him, but Xia Jingyu was far away, nowhere to be found. Opening his eyes, Suyu's consciousness gradually returned to reality. He looked at the ruler in his hand, and there was no halo on it. A deep sense of disappointment lingered in his heart. Had he failed? In the end, his soul was too weak. Even with his deep feelings, he could not move the ruler. With a hint of bitterness in his mouth, Suyu cupped his fists at the Wong clan leader. I was being unreasonable and wasted your time and tools. The Wong clan leader was startled. He stepped forward and held Suyu's right palm, turning it over and over to look at the pink mark. His mouth was full of excitement as he clicked his tongue in wonder. The mark that appeared on the 9th notch is so realistic, and the pink auspicious cloud. What does this picture mean? The rest of the people were also very surprised, and they all came forward to watch. Suyu was at a loss and murmured, I broke through the 9th notch? The Wong clan leader laughed. Ha ha ha, not bad. You are extremely in line with the requirements of the red dust dream. Or rather, this elixir is specially refined for your immortal heart. I can't imagine what kind of effect it will have if you swallow it. Suyu was stunned. What about them? They should be about the same as me, right? Hearing this, everyone could not help but feel embarrassed for Shuiying and the other two. About the same? The difference was too big. The Wong clan leader laughed. Little friend Su is really talented, and you are full of surprises. Everyone could not help but think of what Kaylin said. For Suyu, there was nothing impossible in the world. With the realm that even the gods had not reached, he had successfully achieved the 3 notch marks that many level 3 wizards had not achieved. Not only that, but he had also broken the record of the notch marks in one go. However, despite their surprise, they quickly returned to reality. The smile on the Wong clan leader's face gradually disappeared, and his expression became solemn. He pointed to Shuiying and the other two. Suyu looked at them, and his intuition told him that the black silk indicated that something was wrong. As expected, the Wong clan leader told him the ins and outs of the matter. After listening to it, Suyu understood what they meant. They wanted him to enter the dream to rescue them. The mistress of the greatest saint lady temple cupped her hands and said, I sincerely ask Mr. Su to save Shuiying. I will never forget your great kindness. Su quickly waved his hand. Mistress, please rise. Shuiying and I are friends. Even without your request, I will do my best to save him in the dream. Hearing this, the mistress of the greatest saint lady temple was slightly relieved, and her gaze towards Suyu became softer. No matter how she looked at it, Suyu was really the most outstanding young man. It was definitely a blessing for the saint lady to marry him. The Lord of the Holy Saint Temple also said, I also ask Mr. Su to help. After all, this matter concerns the survival of the wizard tribe. Before he finished speaking, he was interrupted by Suyu. I am going to rescue him as a friend. I hope the mistress can forgive me. Chapter 1439. Before Suyu could answer, Wang Qingchen, who had long disliked the Lord of the Holy Saint Temple, said, Only saving Shuiying and Kaylin. That is what I mean. If the Lord of the Holy Saint Temple has the ability, you can save them yourself. Is there anything else you don't understand? The Lord of the Holy Saint Temple shouted righteously. The sorcerer tribe is in a difficult situation, but it is unwise to ignore the public for personal reasons, Wang Qingchen scoffed. What a joke! Suyu is an outsider with a suspicious identity. Why should he be responsible for the survival of the wizard tribe? Besides, didn't Zhang Lin also suspect Suyu? Even if Suyu wanted to save him, Zhang Lin had to be willing. What if, after Zhang Lin is rescued, he has the reputation of being rescued by a suspicious person, and his reputation is ruined, and Zhang Lin resents Suyu instead? The Lord of the Holy Saint Temple said angrily, How is this possible? As soon as he finished speaking, he heard a burst of laughter from the juniors. Others can't do this, but Zhang Lin might. Yeah, didn't they do it just now? Who would dare to save a person who had ignored the kindness he had shown to the shaman tribe and forcefully labeled him as a suspicious person? Who knows, if you save him, he might bite back at you. Yes, yes, it's best not to get involved with such people, lest they bite the hand that feeds them. The Lord of the Holy Saint Temple gnashed his teeth in hatred, but he knew that what his group had done before had angered both humans and gods, so he could not blame anyone else. All right, Su, you do as you see fit. Su, you didn't even look at him. He didn't need anyone to teach him how to do things. Clan Master, let's not waste any more time. Let's begin, Su said. The Wong Clan Master nodded and handed the last red dust dream in the world to Su. Su swallowed it without hesitation. All of a sudden, a lingering energy invaded Su's soul, causing him to fall into a deep slumber. His vision gradually darkened, but Su's consciousness was still very clear. Dense lines appeared in the dark sky, each one leading in one direction. Su touched a line nearby, and the information of the line immediately appeared in his soul. He couldn't help but be surprised. This is the direction to Wang Qingqian's dream. He touched another line, and another message appeared in his mind. This is the mistress of the greatest saint, Lady Temple. Every thread represented a dream that led to each person. Moreover, whether that person was in a dream or not would be reflected in his mind when he touched the lines. What Su wanted to enter now was the dreamland of the creatures in Fan Capital. Those creatures must be ones that Su had seen before. After pondering for a moment, Su set his sights on the two elders of the Chu clan, the one-armed elder and the blind elder. The two of them should be the ones who had the clearest grasp of the situation in Fan Capital. However, when Su found their lines, he found that they hadn't fallen asleep yet. Now that the army is surrounding the city, it would be strange if they could sleep. Feeling helpless, Su tried to search for the rest of the clan elders' lines. However, without exception, none of them were in a state of slumber. Before long, Su searched through all the elders he had met, but to no avail. It's not as easy as I thought it would be to find a person who is sleeping. In that case, I can only choose him. A person appeared in Su's mind. It was Chu Wen. At that time, he offended Kalin and was knocked out by Su. Now his injury should not have healed. It was very likely that he was still recuperating. As for who was most likely to be asleep, he was the most likely. With a thought, Su quickly found Chu Wen's line, touched it, and immediately got feedback. Chu Wen was in a dream. Sure enough, Su said to himself. With a thought, he immediately followed Chu Wen's line. Soon, at the end of the line, a shining exit appeared in front of him, which seemed to only allow one person to pass through. One more step forward, and it was Chu Wen's dream. However, Su did not act rashly. Su did not dare to ignore the experience of Shuiying, Kalin, and Zhonglin. Shortly after entering other people's dreams, they were injured. It was obvious that something must have noticed that they had invaded other people's dreams. With his eyes slightly narrowed, Su carefully explored the exit with great patience. After a long time, Su's eyes suddenly flashed. His hand was like lightning, and he suddenly grabbed something from the entrance of the dream. When he opened his palm, it turned out to be a weak, dark red bug. This is... Su's eyes lit up. He was now in a state of nothingness. How could such a dark, red bug appear? The dark red bug at the entrance of Chu Wen's dream made Su more cautious, and he stared at the exit and continued to observe. Half a day later, Su captured 3 more dark red bugs. In this way, the bugs at the entrance of the dream were cleaned up. These bugs may be the reason why they were attacked at the same time. Su secretly thought that it was very likely that there were similar bugs at the entrance of the dream they passed through. These bugs may not be strong, but it was no problem for them to monitor their every move. Su wrapped the 4 bugs with his soul and did not kill them, so as not to startle the person who secretly arranged the bugs. In the outside world, the mistress of the greatest saint Lady Temple, the Wong clan master, and others waited for half a day, but they did not see the pink mist appear on Su's forehead. Why is this happening? He has not entered the dream of others for such a long time. Did he not find the right person? The mistress of the greatest Saint Lady Temple could not sit still. In half a day, the black silk on the foreheads of the three people had increased tenfold. Once the pink mist was completely replaced by the black silk, that part of their soul would be permanently sealed in the dreams of others, and the three original bodies would sleep forever, unable to wake up. The Wong clan master was also slightly puzzled. According to reason, it should not be so slow. Could it be that something has happened? The previous abnormalities of the three people made the Wong clan master suspicious. However, Wang Qingqin's eyes flashed, and he said with certainty, "Don't worry, everyone. Based on my understanding of Brother Su, I am afraid he has found some clues now and is dealing with it carefully and patiently. Although we only spent half a month in the Azura Forbidden Lands, he is bold and cautious, far above the majority of the older generation. He has not entered the dream for so long, so he must have found some signs." Wang Qingqin licked his lips excitedly, as if he wanted to follow Su Yu and take the risk. Just by imagining it, he could see Su Yu carefully discovering some secret at this moment. Just as his voice fell, sure enough, a pink mist finally appeared on top of Su Yu's head. Wang Qingqin laughed and said, "Haha, did you see that? I was right. Brother Su must have discovered the secret of their attack just now." It was a wise decision to let Brother Su take the lead. Su Yu stepped into Chu Wen's dream, but what he saw was an unbearable scene. Chu Wen was currently in the wilderness, making love with three women who were as beautiful as flowers, doing that kind of thing that was completely shameful. Su Yu was stunned and couldn't help but laugh. He shook his head and laughed out loud. "You are in trouble, but you can still fantasize in your dreams. No wonder you are the second heir of the Chu clan." The sudden sound caused Chu Wen to be shocked, and he screamed, "Su Yu! You, how did you appear here? I must be dreaming." Crash! The three beautiful women around him disappeared, and the surrounding scene changed in an instant. It was as gloomy as hell. Su Yu's body also changed, becoming like a ferocious demon. This was the impression of Su Yu in the depths of Chu Wen's heart, and it was reflected in the dream. Su Yu looked at himself in surprise and laughed. "It turns out that you are so afraid of me. That's even better." As a ferocious demon, Su Yu stepped forward and strangled Chu Wen's neck. "Speak. What is the situation in Fan Capital now? If you can't tell me, I will eat you." In Chu Wen's dream, Su Yu immediately turned into a demon with a bloody mouth. Chu Wen was so frightened that he screamed, I'll speak, don't eat me." At this moment, his heart was on the verge of collapse. He had finally had a wet dream, but Su Yu, the demon, had inexplicably broken in. Was there anything more tragic than a beautiful dream turning into a nightmare? The God Realm's army descended from the sky and appeared directly in Fan Capital. They started a massacre, and Fan Capital has fallen. What? Even Su Yu couldn't help but be shocked. In just half a month, Fan Capital, known as one of the three major cities of the wizard tribe, had fallen just like that? What is the situation in the city? Su Yu's heart was particularly heavy. The Chu clan was all captured alive and became prisoners. 90% of the rest of the wizards in the city were slaughtered and used as blood sacrifices. Only 10% were left as slaves to build something for them. I am now being used as a slave by them. Hearing this, Su Yu's heart trembled. Fan Capital had fallen. The Chu clan had the demon subduing drum, a great wizard tool passed down by the wizard ancestors, and the powerful jade pendant that contained the power of the wizard ancestors. This kind of Chu clan was actually defeated in a short half a month. Who did it? An ordinary army alone could not have easily defeated you and captured all of you. Chu Wen said, I don't know. When the mansion was breached, I was resting, but I heard from them in the dungeon that the emperor of the heaven-defying empire, Nitian Gyun, had appeared. It really was him. as early as when the triple morpho worm was being chased by a mysterious level 2 divine path strong man. So you realize that it was probably Nitian Guyun. Now he had proof. If he had done it himself, it would have been possible to do it. Reluctantly calming down, Suyu asked, "You said that 90% of the wizards were used as blood sacrifices. What is the blood sacrifice? What are you building by using the remaining people as slaves?" Chu Wen said, "The blood sacrifice is exactly what we are building. That thing is very huge, so huge that you can't imagine it. I remember that its name seems to be—" Just as he was about to speak, his voice suddenly disappeared. Although his mouth was moving, no sound came out. What was even more strange was that his figure was gradually becoming transparent until it disappeared. Chu Wen was surprised. "What's wrong with me? Can you hear me?" Gradually, his figure disappeared completely, leaving only a dream world. But after he disappeared, the dream world began to collapse, as if it was about to collapse. Suyu raised his eyebrows, his expression extremely solemn. "He is dead. At the most critical moment, he was killed in reality." Sure enough, someone was monitoring their dreams. Their conversation must have been detected by someone in reality. Seeing that the dream was broken, Suyu immediately withdrew, lest this part of the soul be trapped in the collapsing dream forever. The exit collapsed almost immediately after Suyu's front foot left, turning into a dark hole that lost all light. Chapter 1440. Fan Capital was broken into ruins. Blood flowed like a river, and the boundless blood vaporized into a layer of blood cloud, dyeing the boundless land into a terrible blood color. Under the bloodlight, in front of a huge cage, a man in a black cloak stood in front of Chu Wen's body. His head was smashed into pieces, and blood flowed on the ground. Next to the man was Nitian Hanqing, who asked, "Why did you suddenly kill him?" The man's voice was ethereal, and he said lightly, "Someone broke into his dream. This is already the 4th person." Nitian Hanqing sneered. In order to find out about Fan Capital, they really put in a lot of effort. 3 teams of masters were killed, but they still did not give up. They even thought of a way to break into the dream. If you did not happen to be proficient in the dream technique and took precautions in advance, the situation of Fan Capital might have been discovered by them. However, the man said, "Don't be too happy. The 4th person is very cautious, and he has successfully escaped." "What? How did he escape?" Nitian Hanqing said in surprise. The man said, "This person is very cautious, and he discovered the soul worm I buried at the entrance of Chu Wen's dream in advance. So I did not notice his existence." Nitian Hanqing frowned. The situation of Fan Capital must not be known to them in advance. No matter what method you use, you must kill this person. The man said indifferently, "The dream is unusual. If you want to kill this person, it is best to ask your father, the Emperor. Only he can ensure that nothing goes wrong." "Need to ask my father? Is this person so powerful?" Nitian Hanqing raised his eyebrows, expressing his dissatisfaction. "If my father is needed for such a small matter, then what is the use of you?" The stalwart man laughed mockingly. "Small matter? Believe me, if he does not die, he will be the biggest obstacle to your plan, even bigger than the Moonwatch sect leader." Nitian Hanqing sneered him. "No." The man shook his head gently, and his breath suddenly became sharp with resentment, anger, and unspeakable fear. "Because I have fought with him." "Fought with you?" Nitian Hanqing's pupils shrank, and he immediately nodded deeply. His expression became much more solemn. "All right, I understand. I'll ask my father to come see you immediately." After he left, the tall and sturdy man stared at Chu Wen's corpse and laughed in a hoarse voice. Suyu, we are about to meet again. Do you still remember me?" Suyu, who had returned to the darkness, did not immediately return to reality. Getting information was only the first step. Rescuing Shuiying and Kaylin was the second step. The easiest way to rescue them is to enter their dreams, Suyu analyzed. At this moment, entering someone else's dream was also a kind of dream. Once he entered their dreams, he would be able to resolve their current crisis. With a thought, 2 lines appeared in front of Suyu, representing Shuiying and Kailin, respectively. Strangely, the ends of the 2 lines led to the same dream world. Strangely, Suyu also saw Zhang Lin's line, which also led to the dream world. How did the 3 of them appear in the same dream? Suyu's eyes shone with a profound light. He was now sure that there was a dreamland expert manipulating everything from the shadows, including the fact that Shuiying and the other 2 were trapped in the same dream. It was also this person's doing. After thinking for a long time, Suyu came to the entrance of the dream and found that there were a few dark red bugs at the entrance that were difficult to detect. After catching them, Suyu carefully entered the dream. As a result, Suyu was shocked to find that he was deep in the fan capital, where everything was as prosperous as before. If Suyu hadn't learned that the fan capital had been destroyed and slaughtered, he would have wondered if his soul had come to the real world. With a thought, Suyu came to the inconspicuous mansion where they were hiding and found the whereabouts of Shuiying, Kailin, and Zhang Lin. However, the scene caught Suyu off guard. Zhang Lin was dressed like a servant, while Kailin and Shuiying were sisters. Looking at their appearance, they were a little older than in reality. What surprised Suyu even more was that Shuiying was holding a child in her arms. Looking closely, he found that Shuiying's hair had been put away and replaced with a fallen horsehair. Her headdress also looked mature and exquisite. She looked like a young woman. She had become a young woman? Damn, wasn't he a man? How could he become a young woman? But when he looked closely, Suyu suddenly felt that Shuiying's appearance was filled with a layer of fluctuations. When he looked closely, he saw the true appearance hidden under the fluctuations. He couldn't help but be shocked. That is, Luo Shuai. Suyu was shocked. Luo Shuai was Shuiying, a handsome and extraordinary man and a pure and clean saint lady. Were the 2 the same person? Suddenly, Suyu remembered that the saint lady disguised herself as Mr. E and participated in the saint lady's son-in-law recruitment. Mr. E from Luo Shuai. Then Shuiying wasn't Shua from the Shua in Shuai? Suyu's mind roared, and he suddenly understood Shuiying's girlish behavior and the tender eyes that once made his hair stand on end. If he was a woman, then everything made sense. Suyu also remembered the rumors that there were often strange, handsome men going in and out of the saint lady's mansion. It was rumored that the saint lady liked handsome men and was very open in some aspects. Now that he thought about it, he was afraid that those were men disguised by the saint lady when she went out. Shuiying was Luo Shuai. Suyu was shocked by this shocking secret. Sister, the baby is going to drink milk. You go back to your room to feed the baby. I will guard brother-in-law for you. Kailin teased the cute little boy. When Suyu heard this, he was suddenly confused. The saint lady not only had a husband in her dream, but she also had a child? Shuiying stared at the distant sky, his eyes filled with confusion. My husband has been gone for 3 years, and I haven't seen him for a long time. When will he come back? Kailin sighed faintly. Sister, don't worry. Brother-in-law has great ambitions and is working hard to become an excellent businessman. When his career is successful, he will definitely come back to accompany you and the child. Go back to your room. Shuiying's eyes were gloomy until the child in her arms began to cry. She woke up from her daze and entered the house with the child in her arms. Hey, Master has been gone for 3 years, and Madam has been watching every day. When will it end? The servant, Zhang Lin, sighed. Kailin's eyes turned cold. Shut up. Is Madam's business something that a little servant like you can gossip about? Zhang Lin hurriedly knelt on the ground and kowtowed. Yes, I know I was wrong. I dare not talk nonsense again. With a snort, Kailin turned her head and entered the house. Suyu floated in the air and stared at the scene in amazement. They had not been attacked or hurt as he had imagined. Instead, they had lost themselves. The pure and clean Shuiying had become someone else's wife, and the unruly Zenglin had become a loyal servant. They had all forgotten who they were and were immersed in this dream. Except for Kaylin, who did not seem to have changed, the others had lost themselves. This was why their original bodies showed signs of being hurt. It was not that they were hurt in the dream, but that this part of their souls was trapped in the dream and could not extricate themselves. They gradually forgot themselves, and the fake case was separated from their original bodies. That was why their original bodies gave out signals of danger. I can't let them continue to fall. Otherwise, if they fall into this dream, I will really lose this part of my soul forever and fall into eternal sleep. Su Yu thought about it, and with a thought he appeared in the mansion. Zhang Lin was cleaning the courtyard honestly. Suddenly he felt a strong wind blowing, and a young and handsome, silver-haired figure landed in the garden. His silver hair was elegant, and he was as handsome as a fairy. When Zhang Lin saw him, he was stunned for a moment and immediately knelt on the ground excitedly. He cried, "Master, you are finally back. Madam and Miss have been waiting for you so hard." "Master?" Su Yu was stunned. At this time, the Saint Maiden and Kaylin, who had heard the noise outside, came out one after another. Looking at Su Yu standing upright in the courtyard, the two women could not help but be distracted, and then their eyes became wet. "Husband." The Saint Maiden handed the child to Kaylin, and with tears in her eyes, she threw herself into Su Yu's arms and hugged him tightly. Su Yu was stiff. "Husband?" "Who?" "Me." He felt the soft squeeze on his chest, the hot warmth, the tempting body fragrance, and the sadness of her crying. Su Yu couldn't deny that at this moment he was also tempted. However, the more realistic it was, the calmer he became. No wonder they all lost themselves. Such a realistic dream. No one would be able to wake up from it. Gently pushing her away from his arms, Su Yu said, "Luo Shuai, please calm down." The saintess opened her tearful eyes, and her face was slightly shy. She lowered her head and said, "Yes, it's this concubine's fault for not thinking things through. This is a public place. This concubine has to bow. Let's go back to our room and talk." Kaylin smiled and teased. "Absence makes the heart grow fonder. Don't let your sister down for 3 years." The Saint Maiden blushed, stamped her feet shyly, and glared at her angrily. "What nonsense are you talking about, sister? In broad daylight, aren't you afraid of shame?" Zhang Lin smiled and cupped his fists. "Master has met with Madam and Mississippi. I will leave first to prepare for dinner today." The warm and harmonious scene was really exciting. This was the life that Su Yu once dreamed of. He lived in seclusion with Qin Xianer and Xia Jingyu, living a quiet and peaceful life as a husband and wife. At this moment, Su Yu was really moved. There was a strong will in his heart, urging Su Yu to stay and live the life he wanted. The strength of this will made Su Yu's heart extremely struggle. As calm as he was, he knew that this was a dream, but he still wanted to fall into it. While he was struggling with himself, the calm light in Su Yu's eyes suddenly flashed, and he secretly bit the tip of his tongue. The sharp pain made Su Yu calm down a lot, and he suppressed the strong will in his heart. His eyes regained clarity, and he pushed the Saint Maiden away indifferently. The Saint Maiden staggered slightly and looked at Su Yu blankly and strangely. "Husband, do you dislike me?" Su Yu shook his head and said, "Do you remember your name?" Chapter 1441. "Really? Then why didn't you resist when I called you Luo Shuai?" Su Yu asked. The holy maiden was stunned and said blankly, I didn't pay attention, did I?" Su Yu shook his head and reached out to grab the surface of her body. He broke something and revealed the pure and beautiful true face of the holy maiden. "So, do you remember who this face belongs to?" Su Yu condensed a mirror in front of her. The holy maiden was even more confused. Who is this? Why do I have two faces? Husband? What the hell is going on? She was a little scared and approached Suyu pitifully. Suyu was unmoved and said indifferently, I am not your husband. The holy maiden's delicate body stiffened, and the tears in her eyes turned into torrents of tears. Her shoulders trembled, and she looked lonely and miserable. Suyu sighed secretly. What a realistic dream! The more it was like this, the more ruthless Suyu became. Then let me ask you, who is this child? The holy maiden held back her tears like pear blossoms in the rain. This is the child of my husband and I 3 years ago. Even the name was given by my husband. It's okay if you don't recognize me. But why did you forget the child? Suyu said lightly, I have been away for 3 years, but why is the child still only 1 year old? As if they had been poked, the eyes of the holy maiden, Kaelin, and Zanglin all showed a trace of confusion. It was so obviously unreasonable. Why had they never noticed it? It had been 3 years, but the child had not grown up at all? How was this possible? Husband, The holy maiden was anxious and at a loss, and the world was hot and cold, bright and dark. This was a sign that the dream was shaking. You have fallen into a dream. Suyu looked around at the 3 of them and looked at the holy maiden. Your name is Luo Shui, the holy maiden of the Holy Maiden Temple of the Wizard Tribe, and also my nominal fiancé. Your name is Kaelin, and you are a human from the Star River God realm like me. As for you, Suyu looked at Zanglin and said lightly, Your name is Zanglin, and you are also a slave in reality. Well, a slave in a worse state than you are now. Zanglin was at a loss, but the goddess and Kaelin seemed to be caught in some kind of struggle. Pained expressions appeared on their faces, and strands of pink mist were being stimulated from their bodies. Suddenly, the saintess opened her eyes. There were still traces of tears in her pretty eyes, but her eyes had regained their clarity. She said in surprise, I remember now, I am Luo Shui. I was ordered to investigate what happened in Fan Capital. At this time, Kai Lin suddenly opened her eyes and looked around in surprise. Wait, we are in someone else's dream. How did we end up in Fan Capital? Rumble. At this moment, heaven and earth rumbled. Cracks appeared one after another, the great earth cracking apart. Countless creatures in the Fan Capital perished in an instant. Even the child in Kaelin's hand gradually disappeared. The saintess instinctively rushed over and hugged her child. My child! Just as the words left his mouth, he realized that all of this was just a dream. His face couldn't help but turn bright red like a red cloth. Kaelin giggled and said, Sister, the baby needs to be fed. Hearing this, the saintess trembled all over and her legs became weak. She wished she could drill into the ground. Not only did Suyu find out about Shui's identity, but he also witnessed her becoming husband and wife with Suyu in the dream and bearing a child for him. At this moment, she wished she could hide underground and never come out to see anyone again. Suyu also felt a little embarrassed. The dream is about to break. Let's go, or it will be too late. The saintess nodded obediently. Looking at the child in her arms that was gradually dissipating, she felt an inexplicable, stabbing pain in her heart. Although these were dreams, how good would it be if they were not dreams? With regret, the 3 of them rushed out of the dream. Zhang Lin was left in the dream to contemplate. Just as the dream was about to collapse because of the destruction of the dream, he finally remembered his identity, and his face changed drastically. Su, you lied to me. I am not a slave. I am a candidate for the Saint Temple. Ah, with a roar, Zhang Lin also escaped from the dream. The 4 of them escaped together and returned to the dark world. This dark world was still a dream, but it was the dream of their real bodies. Now, as long as they thought about it, they could immediately leave the dark dream and wake up. It was just that the dark world was not what it looked like when they left. The dark world was densely covered with a layer of blood-red light, enveloping the entire dark dream world as if it was isolated from the outside world. The four of them secretly moved their minds, but found that their consciousness was blocked by the blood-red light curtain. They were trapped again. Who is it? Zhang Lin was both vigilant and annoyed. He had been a slave in the dream for 3 years, all thanks to the dreamer. Hee Jr., I trust you have been well since we last met. An indifferent laughter could be heard. Zhang Lin was stunned. Who are you? Have we met before? Swish, a dark lightning struck, heading straight for Zhang Lin. Zhang Lin's face changed slightly, and he reacted very quickly, immediately dodging. But, strangely, the space around him was distorted, causing him to step on the spot, and he could not dodge for a moment. The result was self-evident. He was bombarded by the black thunder on the spot. 8 cracks suddenly appeared on Zhang Lin's body, and he was almost destroyed. If this part of the soul perished, his real body in the outside world would sleep forever. Zhang Lin was shocked. What happened just now? He had clearly moved away, but the space around him was distorted. This was definitely not space magic. Shuiying and Cauldron, who were watching from the side, saw it clearly, and their hearts were heavy to the extreme. Our dreams are being manipulated. The enemy could change the dream with a thought. Suyu, I think the person behind the scenes has appeared. Shuiying gritted her silver teeth, and her voice was cold. She looked ashamed and hateful. If the person behind the scenes hadn't made her fall into a dream, how could Suyu have seen such a shameful scene? But she found that Suyu's expression was extraordinarily dignified, as if he was facing a formidable enemy. Don't speak if I don't let you speak. The ethereal voice of the zither floated again. The only one among you who is qualified to talk to me is Suyu. Zhang Lin was angry and hateful, and he glared at Suyu fiercely. He was almost killed because of his big mouth. Suyu stared in a certain direction and said in a deep voice, I didn't expect you to know the technique of dreams. This is big news. Crash! A middle-aged man with slightly dark skin, dressed in a golden yellow robe, with a light smile on his face, flashed like a phantom, and stood in front of them with his hands behind his back. Shuiying, Cauldron, and Zhang Lin gasped. Ninefold. The person in front of them was none other than Ninefold. Ninefold was calm and elegant looking at Shuiying. He did not move, but Shuiying's body shook, and the wizard power of the disguised body was dissolved, revealing her pure and beautiful true appearance. The breathtaking beauty, the purity of the white dress, illuminated the dark dream world. How have you been, holy maiden? Our fate is not over yet. Shuiying's eyes were full of disdain. You father and son are both beasts. Both Ninefold and his son had planned to include the holy maiden in their harem. Ninefold did not care and smiled lightly. Unfortunately, it is only a part of your soul body. It would be a pity to destroy it. Don't worry, I will keep your soul. When I enter the Saint Capital and get your body, I will wake you up and make you my concubine. Shameless! Shuiying scolded, but her body involuntarily moved toward Suyu, showing her fear and worry. Ninefold's eyes naturally moved to Suyu, and he said lightly, Speaking of which, you robbed me of the remains of the ice and fire divine warrior. The old score has not been settled, and you have also robbed me of my future concubine. Even if I am kind and want to let you go, I can't. Hand over the incantations of the 6 fundamental laws of mind control. Ninefold smiled indifferently and said, The yin-yang wings of Supreme Pole and the remains of the ice and fire divine warrior, wait until I kill my way to the Saint Capital and find your body. He even wanted to snatch away the secret techniques of the Empire of Darkness. Is there any difference in my fate if I hand them over or not? Suyu asked lightly. Ninefold laughed and shook his head. No, but you have no choice. Is that so? Suyu's rebellious intent was boiling. In the dream, all magical powers could not be performed, and only the magical power of the soul and the perception of the realm could be reflected. Nitin Guyun's eyes were deep, and he seemed to be able to see through the looming figure of a great man behind Suyu. I really don't understand why my ancestor, the heaven-defying divine warrior, was willing to submit to a mortal ant like you and become a divine Laksana. Ah, I really can't find a reason to forgive you. Nitin Guyun sighed softly. As he sighed, he was caught off guard, and 2 black lightning bolts flew out of the sleeves behind him. Shui Ying and Kaelin exclaimed subconsciously, "Get out of the way!" Strangely, Suyu did not dodge, but stood motionless, his eyes calm and sharp. Don't be impulsive. This is a dream. How can the heaven-defying divine warrior attack with magical powers? The black lightning you see is just an illusion created by the dream. If you take it seriously, it will really produce power. Boom! 2 terrible thunderbolts bombarded Suyu, thinking that he would be smashed like Zhang Lin. But Suyu was unscathed. Shui Ying and Kaelin were both smart women, and they immediately showed surprise on their faces. Doesn't this mean that as long as we stay true to our hearts, the heaven-defying divine warrior can't do anything to us? In the dream, no magical attacks could be performed. The heaven-defying divine warrior's attack just now was actually an attack of the power of the dream. If the attacked person thought it was real, then it was real, and it would cause unimaginable damage to the body. Suyu shook his head solemnly. Don't be too happy too early. It's just that magical powers are ineffective in the dream. The attack at the soul level is not restricted, and the strongest soul attack of the heaven-defying divine warrior was the reverse intention. The reverse intention inherited from the depths of the bloodline. Oh, you are as smart as ever, so smart that I am afraid. The smile on Nitin Guyun's face gradually disappeared, and his eyes gradually narrowed. It was not in vain for me to personally enter the dream to deal with you. Your threat is indeed too terrible. This is the consensus between me and Brother Kunlun. Brother Kunlun? To be regarded as a brother by Nitin Guyun, who despised all living beings. The cultivation of that person was definitely not below Nitin Guyun. Who was he? Suyu. I have no choice but to get rid of the trouble and keep you here forever. Nitin Guyun clenched his 5 fingers. An entire black dream space shrank for a while. A 5-finger mountain was vaguely visible, rumbling down from the sky. Inside the 5-finger mountain, there was a reverse intention obliterating all the reverse intentions that disobeyed the will. It was so majestic that Suyu's divine path could not help but tremble. It was also a reverse intention, but the strength of the opponent was more than 10 times that of Suyu. However, the more it was so, the stronger Suyu's reverse intention became. Without fear in his heart, he shouted, "Reverse intention, divine path." The reverse intention divine path manifested and turned into a giant with black hair and black eyes. It looked up to the sky and let out a silent cry. Its fist slammed into the 5-finger mountain that could destroy everything. Chapter 1442. Boom! The 2 collided in the air, bursting with boundless reverse will, shaking the blood-red light curtain in the sky and making it crumble. However, the reverse will was stronger when it was stronger. The reverse will of the heaven-defying divine warrior was like this, and so was Suyu's reverse will. Suyu's divine Laksana's fists were smashed by the 5-finger mountain, which stimulated the reverse will. The body of 1,000 feet suddenly increased by 1,000 feet. The smashed fists quickly recovered, and with an even stronger reverse will it counterattacked. The same was true for the 5-finger mountain, which was full of the will to obliterate all disobedience. Sensing the unyielding will of Suyu's godly law Laksana, the 5-finger mountain suddenly doubled in size, suppressing with a stronger reverse will. Bang! There was a loud roar, and a stronger collision broke out between the 2. This time, the arms of the godly law Laksana were shattered, but with the reverse will it grew 100 feet high again, fighting back with an even more unyielding will. The Five-Finger Mountain was also enraged, and its reverse will was strong, constantly expanding. Two completely different reverse wills, surging wave after wave, accompanied by the skyrocketing of each other's reverse will. Nitian looked at it coldly and said, "It is worthy of being a creature whose ancestors were willing to be reduced to a godly law Laksana. Its reverse will is not strong, but it is endless and has no end in sight." Staring at the reverse will that was constantly rising and condensing, Nitian Guyun's killing intent was even stronger. Su Yu's reverse was not obliterated, but with the help of Nitian Guyun's oppression, it was broken again and again. Now it was 15,000 feet high. "I can't let him go any longer," Nitian Guyun said, and his eyes suddenly burst to the fierce light. He slowly closed his eyes. The Five-Finger Mountain in the sky gradually stopped, suspended in the void, motionless. But behind the Five-Finger Mountain, there was a phantom of 100 feet high. The Five-Finger Mountain was just the right hand of the phantom. Suddenly, an overbearing reverse, that was 100 times stronger than the Five-Finger Mountain, suddenly descended into the dark dreamland. Its huge body propped up the sky and earth of the entire world of darkness, and its huge head cracked the blood curtain, as if it could not withstand its towering body, and could not withstand the terrifying and boundless annihilation of the defying will. The appearance of the figure was none other than Nitian Guyun. "I used the bloodline inheritance, the reverse will, and tried my best to kill you in your dream. Suyu, you should be proud of yourself for leaving this place in such a way, and your name will be known throughout the ages." Nitian Guyun's huge body moved gently. He gently lifted his right foot, but this slight movement created a terrifying reverse intent that was 10 times stronger than the Five-Finger Mountain. Bang! With a stomp, Su Yu's 10,000-foot-tall virtual shadow was shattered by the stomp and turned into dust. The defying will was destroyed. Su Yu's face turned pale all of a sudden. As a soul, his body had cracked, and he had been greatly affected. The giant foot's momentum did not diminish, and it seemed like it was going to crush Su Yu along with it. Raising his head to look at the gigantic palm that covered the sky, he felt a sense of unease from the depths of his soul. At this moment, Su Yu was like a candle in the wind, about to be extinguished in the storm. The rebellious will is rising again. Su Yu's eyes were filled with unwillingness, and his rebellious intent was unquenchable. The broken shadow of the godly lordship was reborn once again, turning into a giant of 1,500 feet. He roared at the sky, gathered his whole body's rebellious will, and blasted it at the giant foot. But the result was that it only created a ripple on the sole of the foot. Then it was crushed by the giant palm without any resistance. Bang! The giant palm stepped on the fragments of the godly lordship under its feet, constantly grinding the fragments into dust, and then grinding the dust into nothingness. Nitian Guyun's huge face was full of indifference, ruthlessness, and contempt, like a god looking down on an ant. "If you were given another 10,000 years, I might be afraid of you, but now you are too weak to withstand a single blow." The giant foot stepped on the ground, completely trampling all the fragments into nothingness. The soul that was born was broken, and it swept over Su Yu like a tsunami. His soul was blasted away for an innumerable distance, and his body, which was already broken, was finally broken, and most of his chest was shattered. No, the holy maiden flew over and wanted to help Su Yu. However, the giant palm of Nitian Guyun descended from the sky and held her in his palm. He said indifferently, "You are destined to be my woman, and you are not allowed to contact other men." After saying that, he stuffed the soul of the holy maiden into his chest. Looking at it from afar, one could see that the soul of the holy maiden was imprisoned in his transparent chest. Once he destroyed the wizard tribe and found the body of the holy maiden, he would return this part of the soul, wake her up, and let her become his real woman, a real concubine. Nitian Guyun looked down at Su Yu, and the corners of his mouth raised into a light smile. How is it? This kind of feeling of watching the woman who loves you being taken away is not good, is it? It doesn't matter, it will be over soon. The huge foot stepped on Suyu with a momentum of crushing everything. The world roared, and the dark dreamland was on the verge of collapse. No one could save Suyu. Suyu stared at the empty chest, looked at the soul body that was about to break, and gritted his teeth, without the slightest hint of surrender. As long as I am alive, I will not stop fighting. Suyu's mind echoed with an incomparably firm belief. Along the way, how dangerous had the predicament he had encountered? How desperate was the situation he had encountered? But he had never given up. Only because he had someone to protect, he had unfinished business, and he had regrets that he had not made up for. Obviously, the whereabouts of Xia Jingyu will be found soon, and I will be able to reunite with her soon. How can I fall here? Facing the annihilation of the strong reverse will, Suyu stood up firmly. Under the huge pressure, the bones of his 2 legs cracked and burst into pieces. Pieces of bone spurs pierced through the flesh and stabbed out of the body. One by one, the tendons broke and the blood, under high pressure, shot out along the pores like a line of blood. A stream of blood flowed out of his facial orifices. He stood up, and under the incomparable annihilation of despair, he still stood up. Looking at Suyu, who was covered in blood, his eyes were still clear, and still bursting with the monstrous reverse will. As an enemy, Zhang Lin also felt trembling at this moment, feeling admiration from the bottom of his heart. Death was inevitable, but there was a difference between dying on one's knees and dying on one's feet. The former was sad, and the latter was respectable. A deep tremor seemed to arouse the dreams of Zhang Lin's youth. At that time, wasn't he also young and vigorous? Didn't he also make great aspirations? And didn't he also fight endlessly? But since when was he forced to lower his head by reality, and his wings were cruelly broken? Zhang Lin's heart was boiling again, and he seemed to understand why he had been stagnant for so many years and was always under Zhao Tianyin. It was because he had lost the heart of fighting like Suyu. He closed his eyes silently, and his gloomy face gradually bloomed with a relieved smile. He held the hilt of the sword at his waist and laughed up to the sky. Suyu, you go first, and I will draw the sword for you later. No one could save Suyu. All he could do was draw a sword and send his own sword to Nitin Guyun. This sword was for himself and for Suyu. Nitin Guyun was surprised. Under this reverse will, which was 100 times stronger than Suyu, he could still stand up. Looking down at the short figure, Nitin Guyun felt uneasy for no reason. He seemed to see a giant, who was no weaker than him, growing rapidly. Bang! Bang! His heart suddenly jumped, and uneasiness lingered in his heart. The light smile on his face disappeared unconsciously and was replaced by a dignified look. The speed of the giant palm suddenly skyrocketed, and it slammed down. However, the more the giant palm stepped down, the more intense the uneasiness in Nitin Guyun's heart became, and he felt more and more frightened. Close! 1,000 feet! Under the giant palm, countless cracks appeared on the ground of the dark dreamland. 5,000 feet! A strong air pressure condensed into a crazy shockwave that swept everything. 100 feet! The huge reverse will directly obliterated most of the dark dreamland, leaving only the blood-colored light curtained to struggle. 500 feet! 10 feet! 3 feet! 10 feet! At this moment, the giant palm had almost overlapped with the ground. If this was the outside world, all creatures would have been destroyed. However, under the giant palm, there was a broken body, a thin figure, and a figure that was not tall. He was still standing, his body straight, like a spear standing up to the sky. So unyielding, so full of fighting spirit. No one doubted that even in death, the fighting spirit would remain in the world and would not dissipate for a long time. Finally, when the giant palm slammed on top of Suyu's head, the spear, the straight and unyielding figure, would be crushed into dust. He slowly opened his eyes. However, it was no longer the eyes of a living creature. It was a pair of almost dark red eyes, very similar to the sacred forest in the Azura Forbidden Lands. What was different was that Suyu's eyes didn't emit a ruthless and vicious aura that came from someone who had lost all rationality. Instead, they emitted a terrifying and uneasy will. Fighting spirit, crazy fighting spirit, endless life, endless fighting spirit. Suyu murmured, and an extremely mysterious atmosphere surrounded him. In the eyes of Nitin Guyun, Suyu gradually turned into a weapon. One moment, it was like a peerless sword. The next moment, it was like a rare treasure that could destroy the sky. And the next moment, it was like a long spear that could sweep the world in short. With a single thought, Suyu changed in an instant, as if he had become all the weapons in the world. Soldiers, war, gather the weapons of the world and absorb endless fighting spirit. Swoosh! With a soft sound, the weapon that Suyu had turned into made a roar that seemed to split the sky and earth, and a bright sword light appeared above his head. Crack! With a crisp sound, Nitin Guyun's foot was split in half. The foot that was cut in half fell along both sides of Suyu, directly smashing the blood-colored light curtain on the ground. The blood-colored light curtain was broken, and the dark dream was back in their control. Not good. Nitin Guyun's face changed slightly. Kaylin's eyes flashed, and with a thought, she immediately escaped from the dream. Zhang Lin was also overjoyed and shouted, "Suyu, run!" He also fled immediately. However, Suyu did not move. His blood-red eyes were full of crazy fighting spirit, and he had no intention of retreating. Before Nitin Guyun had time to rejoice, Suyu turned into a peerless sword and swept his legs. Crack! His legs were also shattered. Looking at the extremely fierce mutation of Suyu, Nitin Guyun finally showed a serious expression. The Heaven-Fighting Warrior, the second of the Heaven-Fighting 3 Strokes. Limitless Style. Chapter 1443. It was rumored that the most difficult person to inherit the legacy was the Heaven-Fighting Divine Warrior. To inherit his Heaven-Fighting 3 Strokes, the power of the bloodline was far from enough. One must also have an immortal heart of fighting spirit. Rebirth in despair, erupt in hopelessness, and nirvana in hot blood. Therefore, the descendants of the Heaven-Fighting Divine Warrior were almost extinct because they all died in nirvana again and again. The number of people was decreasing, and now there were almost none. Therefore, the Heaven-Fighting 3 Strokes were lost. He never expected that Suyu not only practiced, but also succeeded in nirvana to the 2nd stroke, the ultimate style. Many descendants of the Heaven-Fighting Divine Warrior had not reached the realm, but Suyu had reached it. The murderous intention in his eyes was surging. This man must not be left alive. Otherwise, he would become a great threat in the future. Die. The heaven-defying Divine Warrior roared, and his broken right leg was instantly regenerated, obliterated by an even stronger reverse will. Bang! The weapon that Suyu had transformed into was immediately broken. However, before he could rejoice, the fragments immediately reassembled and recast the divine weapon. The sharpness of the divine weapon could destroy the world, its sharpness chilling the heart. An inextinguishable fighting spirit not only did not weaken, but became stronger. The heaven-defying Divine Warrior crushed the divine weapon again. However, the fragments were reassembled in an instant and recast into a divine weapon. The sharpness was even stronger, and the fighting spirit was even stronger. A reverse will rose in the heart of the heaven-defying Divine Warrior. There was nothing in the world that could defy him. He did not believe that he could not kill an ant. Boom! Boom! Again and again, Suyu was crushed by the boundless giant palm and turned into endless fragments. However, it was reforged again and again, and each time it was stronger than the last. Each time it was sharper and colder than the last. After 9,999 times, the heaven-defying Divine Warrior finally panicked. Suyu could not be killed, nor could he be obliterated. Just like the legendary ultimate style, The fighting spirit was infinite until the enemy was killed. At this moment, the divine weapon that Suyu had transformed into exuded a peerless sharpness and was extremely terrifying. One blow could cut off half of Nichiren Guyun's body. The awe-inspiring fighting spirit and the immortal rebirth finally made Nichiren Guyun want to retreat. He had to retreat. Not only was he unable to kill Suyu, but more importantly, if he didn't retreat, this part of his soul would be destroyed in this dream. The original body in the outside world would sleep forever. This time he could not kill Suyu. Instead, it was Suyu who had been pressured into desperate situations time and time again, allowing Suyu to be reborn and comprehend the limitless style, which no one else could comprehend. Suyu, how about we call it a draw? Nichiren Guyun said. In an instant, there was a sharp pain in his chest. Nichiren Guyun could not help but grit his teeth, as if he was enduring a heart-wrenching pain. What was even more strange was that the Defying Will deity statue had shrunk to half its original size, turning into a figure of 5,000 feet. As a heaven-defying divine warrior, no one had been able to defy him since ancient times. This was the reason why he was so powerful. Now he had chosen to give up, which meant he had gone against his own will that could not be defied. Therefore, the Defying Will was weakened by more than half. However, Suyu's dark red eyes were filled with fighting intent. It was like a spark that had been ignited, and it was burning even more intensely. What answered Nichiren Guyun was Suyu's sharpness. He transformed into a long whip and lashed out abruptly. Whoosh! The remaining blood-red light curtain was directly smashed by this terrible blow, and there was nothing left. Nichiren Guyun screamed, and half of his body was smashed. The half of the body that had sealed the Holy Maiden was also smashed. Nichiren Guyun was furious. Boy, do you really want to fight me to the end? Don't forget, it is only a matter of time before I destroy the wizard tribe. My real body is 10,000 times more powerful than it is in the dream. As soon as his voice fell, his body of 5,000 feet was reduced to less than 3,000 feet. He retreated once again, and the Defying Will weakened once again. What answered him was another destructive attack from Suyu. Nichiren Guyun's eyes were full of resentment. Junior, you forced me to retreat and destroyed my Defying Way. I swear that I will crush your bones and scatter them into ashes. What answered him was a blow from Suyu's meteor hammer, which smashed his body of 3,000 feet into pieces. He was directly killed. At the critical moment, he shouted, "Get out of the dream!" A mysterious wave swept across, and before this part of Nichiren Guyun's soul was completely shattered, he escaped back to his original body. However, his Defying Will figure shrank from 1,000 feet to 100 feet, 100 feet to 10 feet, and finally returned to its normal size. The way of the Defying Will of the Divine Warrior was destroyed. The Defying Will was powerful and incomparable because of the Defying Will. But everything in the world had its advantages and disadvantages. The Defying Will made the strongest dynasty, but it also bound them. Once the Defying Will was used, they could not retreat. Retreat was a violation of the way of the Defying Will, as if cutting off the foundation of the way of the Defying Will. No matter how strong the Defying Will was before, once the way of the Defying Will was immediately destroyed. Therefore, the Defying Will would not be used easily. If it was used, it would be a fight to the death. In the dream, the soul of the Divine Warrior could only be used with the Defying Will. Now that he chose to retreat, the Defying Will that he had cultivated for thousands of years was shattered. In reality, apart from his cultivation, there was no strong way of the Defying Will to speak of, and his strength was lost by more than 30%. Puff! In the sky above Fan Capital in a behemoth, in a secret room protected by countless guards, Nichiren Guyun, who was sitting cross-legged, suddenly opened his eyes and spat out a mouthful of milky, white divine blood. His eyes were ferocious, angry, and crazed, like a scheming traitor who had been exposed on the eve of a coup d'etat. Around him, the Defying Will was declining at an alarming rate, and even the color of the divine blood that was spat out was gradually turning gray. Hearing the movement in the secret room, the two confidants who were guarding outside immediately rushed in. "Monarch!" They subconsciously saw that the color of several drops of divine blood on the ground was rapidly dimming. They could clearly see that this was a sign that the power of the bloodline was fading. Moreover, the defying will that was declining in Nitian Guyun's body was very clear. The two were shocked. "Monarch, this is—" Suddenly the two realized something, and they felt a chill all over. "My way of the defying will has been broken." "Ah," Nitian Guyun sighed softly, and his voice was soft, without any hint of blame. But the two confidants were covered in cold sweat, trembling all over, and kept bowing their heads to beg for mercy. "Monarch, please have mercy." We didn't see anything. Please spare our lives." "This is my fault. I am very sorry to have implicated you." "Well, you can go in peace. I will take good care of your family," Nitian Guyun said lightly. The two confidants trembled all over, knowing that they had discovered Nitian Guyun's big secret and were about to be killed. At this moment, how could they dare to wait to be killed? Without saying a word, the two jumped up and turned around to escape. But before they could escape to the door of the secret room, their heads were penetrated by two palms, and their souls were obliterated. A flame rose from the 5 fingers, and the two bodies were burned to ashes, leaving nothing behind. Nitian Guyun waved his sleeves, erased the remaining defying will in the sky, and returned to his seat, saying indifferently, "Come in." "Walala!" A group of guards entered and looked at the ashes on the ground, and their hearts were shocked. The 2 guards on the left and right intended to rebel, but they were discovered by me in time and were killed on the spot. Now you immediately arrest the relatives and friends of these 2 people, and anyone who has anything to do with them. One of the guards replied, "Yes, sir." "May I ask the monarch how to deal with them?" "Well, now is the time to use the troops. Just in case, kill them on the spot." Nitian Guyun said, "In addition, pay attention to whether they have communication jade pendants or other items on them. No one is allowed to read them privately, and they must be handed over to me personally. Those who violate this rule will be treated as traitors and will be killed." 9. Clan. Yes. Everyone was shocked and immediately led the troops. Next, there was a panic in the barracks, and the smell of blood permeated the entire barracks. But this matter was handled very secretly, and the commotion quickly subsided and almost no one noticed. Soon, Nitian Guyun got a pile of communication jade pendants in his hands, one of which was held in his palm, and his face was cold. Humph! They really spread the news, but fortunately I was prepared. It turned out that the 2 men knew that they would die at the critical moment, and they secretly spread the news. Unfortunately, Nitian Guyun caught up with them again. He didn't want the outside world to know that his inverse divine path had been broken, and his strength had been greatly reduced. Summon the Imperial Guards. Soon, a group of Imperial Guards came. This was another group of trusted subordinates of the heaven-defying divine warrior, responsible for the peripheral defense. Just now, it was the internal guards who guarded his retreat, and they were more trusted than the Imperial Guards. Greetings to the monarch. The commander of the Imperial Guards knelt down. Nitian Guyun said coldly, "I have found out that there are traitors in the internal guards. You wait for my order to arrest them." What? The Imperial Guards thought they had heard wrong. The internal guards were the absolute trusted subordinates of the heaven-defying divine warrior. "Yes, this general obeys," the commander said. "Wait." Nitian Guyun's eyes burst with ruthlessness. "After they are brought to justice, they don't need to be brought back. Do you understand?" Ah! Everyone secretly inhaled a breath of cold air. The implication was that they would be executed secretly, but they did not dare to ask and immediately obeyed the order. When they left, Nitian Guyun sighed, "Don't blame me for being ruthless. Who let you know too much?" He couldn't guarantee that the Imperial Guards who carried out the mission would also know the news. The only way was to kill them too. What he didn't know was that outside his secret room, a black shadow had silently flashed by and had seen everything that had happened. Shenjing, in the main hall of the Wang clan, the black threads on the foreheads of Kaelin and Zhang Suyu, and the Saint Lady gradually faded, and the pink mist also gradually faded, making everyone present happy. It seemed that Suyu had successfully rescued them, but strangely, they had not woken up for a long time. They had been worried for a long time, and finally Kaelin and Zhang woke up. The people in the hall immediately surrounded them and said in surprise, "We were worried to death, and you finally woke up!" The Lord of the Holy Saint Temple was the most excited. He looked at Zhang as if he was looking at a treasure. On the contrary, the mistress of the greatest Saint Lady Temple frowned deeply and asked Kaelin, "Kaelin, where is Suyu? Where is the Saint Lady? Didn't they save you? Why haven't they woken up yet?" Kaelin looked at the mistress of the greatest Saint Lady Temple, and a strange look flashed in her eyes. She quickly concealed it, and her face showed a sad expression. "The three of us were trapped in a dream by the enemy and forgot ourselves. It was Suyu who entered the dream and rescued us. However, we met Niti and Guyun." Chapter 1444. Niti and Guyun. The two temple masters, the Wang clan master and Ling Wu, were all shocked. How did I meet him? For today's wizard tribe, Niti and Guyun was simply an invincible nightmare. Such a powerful figure had actually, personally, intercepted them. Then how did you escape? Where are Suyu and the Saint Lady? The mistress of the greatest Saint Lady Temple was the most anxious. Hearing this, Zhang was shocked. It is impossible for the Saint Lady to come back. But Suyu, is he still fighting with Niti and Guyun? His unintentional words were like thunder exploding in everyone's ears. Everyone seemed to be stunned, staring at Zhang dully, and said, "You, who did you say was fighting against Niti and Guyun?" Even the two hall masters, the Wang clan leader and Ling Wu, were stunned, thinking that they had heard wrongly. Zhang repeated, "It was the battle between Suyu and Niti and Guyun that broke a gap, and we were able to get out of the dream. But why didn't Suyu come back? Could it be that he's still fighting?" Hearing this, they couldn't help but feel terrified. "Su, you could actually fight against someone who was on par with the sect master. What was the result?" Ling Wu asked in surprise. Zhang said, "The last time I saw it, Suyu broke through something in a desperate situation, showing a very terrible fighting spirit, and then the seal was broken. The specific situation is unknown." The mistress of the greatest Saint Lady Temple immediately asked, "What about the Saint Lady?" Hearing this, Zhang said in a deep voice, "She was captured by Niti and Guyun. He threatened to break into this place, capture the saintess, and bring her into the harem." The mistress of the greatest Saint Lady Temple trembled. Her old face was filled with anger, murderous intent, and helplessness. The joy on everyone's faces quickly dimmed. Suyu did not manage to escape and was most likely taken away by Niti and Guyun. Looking at the two unconscious bodies, everyone's eyes were filled with regret. One was a pure and flawless saintess, while the other was a peerless genius, a genius that shocked the world. They were going to fall into a deep slumber forever. But at this moment, there was a weak movement in their bodies. The Holy Maiden's fingers flicked gently, as if she was struggling to wake up. In the dark dreamland, with the escape of Niti and Guyun, the dark red in Suyu's eyes gradually faded and returned to normal. Suyu took a deep breath as he looked at his shattered soul body. Although his injuries were severe, his soul hadn't been destroyed yet, so he just needed to rest for a while. Moreover, after being forced into a desperate situation, the limitless style that had been shackled for a long time finally broke through the bottleneck and reached the initial realm. The never-ending fighting was undying and indestructible. Suyu had a better understanding of its power, and he felt that this technique was even more magical. The more they fought, the stronger they became, until their enemies could no longer withstand it and killed them. With such a terrifying battle intent, he believed that any enemy who encountered it would have a headache. Oh! Suyu turned around and saw that it was the Saint Lady. Half of Nityanguyun's body that had sealed her was smashed by Suyu. Nityanguyun had no time to take care of her and lost her. The saintess had fallen into a coma, which should have been caused by the seal. He could clearly see traces of the heaven-defying divine warrior's soul inside her soul. If she fell into a coma, she would not be able to leave the dark dream world. I can only get rid of these souls first, Suyu said. After thinking for a moment, a crack appeared between his brows. Soul devouring. The unique technique of the 5th stage of the heaven sun gazing at air. Soul devouring. The 2 souls were immediately sucked out and absorbed into Suyu's brow. After the impurities of these souls were removed, they were transformed into pure soul strength and integrated into Suyu's soul. Suddenly, Suyu felt his body swell, as if he was about to explode from the 2 soul strengths. Hiss! As expected of Nityanguyun, just 2 wisps of soul strength are stronger than the souls of most level 3 deities. Suyu was secretly amazed. After devouring the 2 souls, Suyu's soul strength had soared to the realm of level 3. This is an unexpected gain. The soul strength of level 3 can do a lot of things, Suyu said. At this time, the Saint Lady slowly woke up. When she opened her eyes and saw Suyu, her eyes were misty. Am I in a dream again? She subconsciously stretched out a pair of snow-white arms and hooked them around Suyu's neck. She exhaled and said, Even in a dream, will I still think of you? Bad guy, I have completely fallen. Listening to her heart-stirring words, Suyu couldn't help but take another look at this pure and beautiful face, and his heart inevitably swayed. But he still calmly grabbed her hands, put her down gently, and said, Let's go back. His words awakened the half-asleep Saint Lady. Her eyes widened, and she looked at him face to face. Thinking of the shocking and shameful words she had just said, her snow-white and flawless face turned red, and her whole body stiffened, unable to move. I'll leave first. You should keep up with me. Don't stay here any longer. The person who secretly set up the dreamland probably hasn't given up yet. Sue, you didn't want to continue being so embarrassed. With a thought, his figure disappeared and he left the dark world. The Saint Lady lay on the ground, stunned for a long time, and her face was filled with a bitter smile. How can I see him in the future? In the dream of the mortal world, she married him and gave birth to children for him. Coupled with the scene just now, the Saint Lady felt that she had no face to see Suyu. She even wanted to stay in the dream and never leave. Meanwhile, to her horror, a clear and melodious voice of a woman actually sounded out from within the dark dreamland. Do you want to obtain him? I can help you. Swish! A woman in a red dress, stepping on red clouds and dust, appeared in the dark dream. As soon as she appeared, the whole dream world trembled, as if it was afraid. The woman had fair skin, black eyebrows, and exquisite facial features. At first glance, she looked like a woman from a painting, with an unreal, dreamy beauty. The Saint Lady was shocked. She was not a fool. She appeared in this dream at will, most likely because it was arranged by the dream master named Kunlun. With a single thought, she immediately left the dream. But strangely, the woman in the red dress stretched out 2 slender fingers and gently pointed. The Saint Lady, who was about to leave the dream, came back again. Such a shocking move made the Saint Lady look solemn. Who are you? The woman in the red dress smiled leisurely, and this smile was beautiful. I said, I am the person who will help you get him. The Saint Lady was unmoved and said in a deep voice, I am asking about your identity. The red-robed woman covered her mouth and chuckled. She was elegant, but also had a different kind of charm to her. She was indescribably beautiful. Her eyebrows arched up and she chuckled. Even I don't know who I am. However, there was once someone who intruded into the red dust forbidden area. He called me Red Dust Mistress. What? The Saint Lady's hands and feet were cold, and she could not help but gasp. The most terrifying existence in the Azura Forbidden Land, the Red Dust Lady. She was the mysterious creature who had injured the ancestors of the Wong clan in the isolation of the Forbidden Land. She could also enter the minds of the Wong clan members who had swallowed the red dust dream at will and control them with dreams. Knowing that it was this person, the Saint Lady's face turned pale. Don't be afraid. If I wanted to hurt you, even Nitianguyun would have died here, let alone you. The Red Dust Lady said leisurely, looking deeply at the Saint Lady. I just want to help you. The Saint Lady did not fall for this trick and calmly said, Help me? Why? Because I think that lovers should get married. The Red Dust Lady hurriedly stroked the flowing red clouds around her with her jade-like fingers. The world of mortals is beautiful. Every year, the waterside pavilion is lonely and the bridge is lonely. After many years, the water is still floating, and there is no wind, no rain, no one is watching. The Saint Lady heard a bit of loneliness and coldness, and she could not help but think of her and Suyu. Suyu's eyes were clearly in front of her, but she felt that Suyu's eyes were filled with the distant sky. The sky was so empty, but it could not contain her figure. Moved, the Saint Lady felt sympathy and said, There are countless mortals in the Azura Forbidden Land. Why are you lonely? That is their world of mortals. I, from beginning to end, am just a passer-by, the Red Dust Lady said, quietly, unable to hide the loneliness in her expression. She looked at the Saint Lady and said, You are very much like me in the past. The fallen flowers are yearning, but the water is heartless, and I have been lonely for countless years. The Saint Lady's expression eased a lot, and she said, How can you help me? You can only appear in dreams, right? I have a way, but I need you to promise me one condition. The Saint Lady said, What condition? Wear this phoenix crown. The Red Dust Lady pointed to the top of her head. There was a golden, beautiful phoenix crown, exquisite and outstanding, exuding a peerless halo of beauty. The Saint Lady was mesmerized by it and immediately became vigilant. Help me and give me something? This thing is not good, is it? This thing is not dangerous to your life. If you agree, I will fulfill your wish. But if you don't with his temperament, I don't see any future between you two. The last sentence, undoubtedly, moved the Saint Lady. Yes, Suyu did not care about her, and there would be no future between them. After pondering for a long time, she chose to nod. I'll say this in advance. If I don't get what I want in the end, I will not wear this phoenix crown. Okay. The Red Dust Lady smiled leisurely, and she was beautiful. The Saint Lady suddenly felt a trance, and when she opened her eyes again, she had returned to the real world. The mistress of the greatest Saint Lady temple, Ling Wu, the Wong clan master, and many others looked at her with concern, except for one person. Suyu. Mistress, I'm fine. The Saint Lady was a little disappointed. She looked around, but Suyu was not there. The mistress of the greatest Saint Lady temple said, Don't worry, Suyu has come back before you. He is nursing his soul in the house. Hearing that he was injured, the Saint Lady could not help but secretly scold him. Your mind is full of nonsense. Brother Su's soul was injured like that, and you blame him for not being around. However, thinking back to the sudden appearance of the Red Dust Lady after Suyu left, the Saint Lady had some doubts. Was that another dream, or did the Red Dust Lady really appear? And should she tell the mistress of the temple and Brother Su? After thinking about it carefully, the Saint Lady suppressed the idea. If it was a dream, then so be it. If it was real, it did not seem to have any bad effects, right? Suyu healed in the secret room for a day and a night, under the effect of the heavenly fire of the spirit pool. His soul quickly recovered. Slowly opening his eyes, Suyu's eyes showed a rare look of excitement, anticipation, and nervousness. It was as if he had returned to the Shenyue Island when he first entered the Saint Realm. Chapter 1445. Red dust eyes. Su Yu murmured, feeling carefully, and found that there was a residual power of the red dust in his body. After being tempered by the elixir, it was very docile and could be used by Su Yu. These red dust powers were very weak and could only be used once. Su Yu adjusted his state and, with excitement, operated the power of the red dust and forced them to his eyes. His eyes gradually turned pink, like two pink beads. In the pink eyes, Su Yu saw a scene that ordinary eyes could not see. There were red lines in the dark, intricate, involving everyone. Some red lines represented kinship, some represented friendship, some represented love, and some represented hatred. In short, all the creatures were connected by the red dust lines. Are these the red dust lines? Su Yu whispered softly, holding his breath and looking down at himself. However, he saw the densely packed lines connecting him, leading to an endless area, leading to all directions. Su Yu saw the red line between him and Xia Jingyu at a glance. The line was still there. It proved that Xia Jingyu was still alive. The stone that had been hanging in his heart for a long time finally fell. She still existed between heaven and earth, which was the greatest relief. Following the direction of the red line, Su Yu looked deeply. This was where Xia Jingyu was, where he wanted to go. When he determined the direction of the red line, Su Yu's expression became complicated. The Star River God Realm. She has always been in the Star River God Realm. Su Yu was at a loss, puzzled and uneasy. Since she is in the Star River God Realm, why didn't she show up? Is she trapped somewhere, or does she not want to see me? He thought that she had disappeared in the Star River God Realm, but it turned out that she had always been in the Star River God Realm. At this moment, there was a slight vibration at the other end of the red line. Such an abnormality made Su Yu's heart tighten as he stared at the red line. However, the red line continued to tremble, and it became more and more rapid, as if the other end wanted to express something. Su Yu's heart seemed to be grasped by something. Did something happen to Xia Jingyu? Suddenly, Su Yu's mind flashed, and he remembered the rhythm and frequency of the red line one by one. Soon, the red line returned to calm. Su Yu stared at the full rhythm and frequency on the ground, like a musical score with ups and downs. Su Yu glanced back and forth excitedly. In the end, he erased most of them, leaving only 7 notes. The rest of the notes were all repeated. For musical notes, a special language flickered in Su Yu's mind. The Celestial Music Clan. The people of this clan only used musical notes to transmit messages, which became their language. Therefore, the sound they produced was beautiful music. Su Yu translated the 7 Sanskrit notes into the Fairy Sound clan's language. "Brother Su, I'm waiting for you." Su Yu was ecstatic, but he was also extremely worried. He was glad that it wasn't that Xia Jingyu didn't want to see him. He was worried that she was trapped somewhere and needed Su Yu to see her in person. No matter what, many years of searching had finally yielded results. Xia Jingyu was trapped somewhere in the divine realm of the Star River, waiting for her. But where could she be? Where does that red line extend to? Without giving Su Yu a chance to see it clearly, the power of red dust dissipated, and the red dust eyes disappeared. Su Yu's heart was filled with anxiety. Where was she trapped? Is there any danger? But no matter what, he had to return to the divine realm of the Star River as soon as possible. The matter of the wizard tribe must be resolved as soon as possible. I must learn the sky-splitting yin and yang style, cure Yongye Chushua's injury, obtain the great desolation furnace, and refine the world annihilation plate with it. Only then can I return to the divine realm of the Star River. Su Yu's eyes shone brightly, and his expression became more determined. When he left the secret room, there was already a maid waiting outside. When she saw him come out, she immediately informed the 2 temple masters, the Wang clan master and Ling Wu. Su Yu was the only one who had heard the news of Fan Capital. They were anxious, and finally Su Yu came out. However, before they could speak, Su Yu first asked Ling Wu, "May I ask when the Moonwatch sect leader will come out?" Only by challenging the Moonwatch sect leader could Su Yu learn the sky-splitting yin and yang style. Ling Wu was stunned and said, "He has not come out yet. However, the sect leader is already preparing to fight with you." Hearing this, Su Yu's heart settled a little. The sooner the better. "Everyone, I will now talk about the situation in Fan Capital," Su Yu said. The Wang clan master was the most concerned, because Fan Capital was the closest to Shin Capital, and the two were comparable in strength. The worse the situation of Fan Capital was, the greater the danger that Shun Capital was about to encounter. "How many troops does Fan Capital have now?" the Wang clan master asked. Su Yu shook his head. "You should ask first if Fan Capital is still there." "What?" Hearing the implication, everyone present, whether it was the four rulers or the ordinary wizards, was in disbelief. The Wang clan master suddenly stood up and said incredulously, "Are you sure that Fan Capital has fallen?" Su Yu nodded. "Yes, I entered the dream of Chu Wen, the second heir of the Chu clan in Fan Capital. I forced him to ask about the situation in Fan Capital. 90% of the wizards were slaughtered, and the remaining 10% were enslaved to help them build something." Hiss! There was only the sound of people gasping, and there was no other sound. Not only was Fan Capital broken, but the creatures in it were also slaughtered. To be honest, if these words had not come from Su Yu's mouth, they would have scoffed and never believed it. The Wang clan master trembled all over, and his old face showed deep shock. He said, This is not reasonable. The Chu clan has a tool inherited from the wizard ancestor, the demon subduing drum. Even if Nitian Guyun came in person, he might not be able to do anything. What's more, they also have the jade pendant with the power of the wizard ancestor. Once combined, they can erupt with destructive power, enough to repel Nitian Guyun and the army. Moreover, for many years, Fan Capital has plundered resources from all over the place, and has set up as many as 36,000 spells outside the city. If they were activated, no one would be able to break in. How could their city be breached in such a short period of time? This is not reasonable. However, in Su Yu's eyes, everything was too reasonable. The people in charge of the Chu clan are the Blind Elder and the Single-Armed Elder. They seem to be on good terms, but deep down they aren't on good terms. I think the two of them will be fighting over the city and its people. Su Yu was regretting that he hadn't gotten rid of the two of them before he left. Secondly, Nitian Hanqing's use of troops is exceptionally strange. He arrived at Fan Capital like a bolt of lightning without anyone noticing. Hearing the first point, everyone's faces were gloomy, and they believed 80 to 90% of it. They knew in their hearts what kind of people the Chu clan were. They were a group of people who did not care about life or death for wealth. They could already imagine the scene of a last-minute struggle for power. As for the second point, they did not quite agree with it. The Wang clan master shook his head. No matter how good Nitian Hanqing is at using troops, it is impossible for him to ignore the 36,000 spells and appear directly in the city. Su Yu's eyes lit up. What's so difficult about bypassing the spells and directly entering the city? I have a way. Huh. Everyone was shocked, especially the Wang clan chief, who was in disbelief. That's impossible. Even if it's teleportation, it's impossible to teleport so many soldiers in at once. Furthermore, there's a formation outside, so they can't be teleported. Su Yu shook his head. Who said space transfer is needed? The Wang clan master pondered. The 36,000 spells are intercepted in the sky and underground, and it is impossible to bypass them. Su Yu said, Of course it is impossible for them to go into the sky, but it may not be possible to go into the ground. The Wang clan master was confused. Little friend Su, please explain clearly that the defense of the Shun capital is far inferior to that of the Fan capital. If they can bypass the defense of the Fan capital, I am afraid that the Shun capital will be in danger. It is very simple. I don't know if you remember that during the first war between the God Realm and the Wizard Tribe, the Wizard Tribe had built a large number of underground hiding bases to avoid the pursuit of the enemy who invaded the Blackwood Forest? Hearing this, everyone thought for a while. Most people were at a loss. Even Ling Wu, an old man who had been with the sect leader for a long time, was completely unaware. This incident happened too long ago, and it did not affect the overall situation. There were very few records of it in history, and few people would have paid attention to it. Only the 2 temple masters and the Wong clan master, who had the information of the wizard tribe for generations, knew far more history than ordinary people. Their expressions gradually became serious, and a trace of cold sweat appeared on their foreheads. Those underground bases have long been abandoned, but they have not been filled in. At least the underground passages near the Fan capital still exist. Suyu said, I guess among these underground passages, there must be one or even a few passages that lead directly to the interior of the Fan capital, right? Hearing this, everyone suddenly understood. So that was it. The secret underground hiding passage that the wizard tribe had almost forgotten had become the key to the enemy's attack on the Fan capital. Brother Su's wisdom. I admire you from the bottom of my heart. Wang Qingchen sincerely admired him. The rest of the people were also impressed. What Suyu had done along the way was amazing and made his peers feel ashamed of their own inferiority. However, Suyu's face was full of solemnity. Now is not the time to praise me. I have said that Nitian Hanqing is a god of war. When you were still exploring the situation of the Fan capital's defense, he had already occupied the Fan capital and slaughtered everyone. When you have learned that the Fan capital has fallen, why don't you guess where he is now and what he is doing? Hearing this, everyone was shocked. The Wong clan master's face changed dramatically and he shouted, Men, retrieve the family's ancient scrolls and strictly investigate the tunnels of the past. Soon, boxes of dusty secret scrolls were brought up. Everyone found the construction drawings of the ancient roads, and sure enough, they found that one of them led directly to the interior of the Shun capital. Moreover, it was under the old site of the Wong clan's mansion, only 10,000 feet away from where they were now. That abandoned passage had been forgotten and had not been filled up until now. Thinking of this, everyone suddenly felt a chill down their spines, and a chill ran down the soles of their feet. With Nitian Hanqing's military skills, while they were still shocked by the destruction of the Fan capital, it was likely that the other party had already entered the tunnel outside the city. Thinking of this, they felt as if a terrifying, man-eating beast was looking at them from the ground, ready to rush out and eat them at any time. The Wong clan master's hands and feet were cold, and he hurriedly shouted, Men, activate the defense, send a team of strong men, and completely block the abandoned tunnel. He was really scared, and his heart was beating wildly. He used to be like an immortal, but now he was panicking, as if he was facing a peerless enemy. Wait! Suyu stopped him. Chapter 1446. The rest of the people, including the Wong clan master, stared at Suyu. It was as if Suyu was the master of this place, not the Wong clan master. Suyu accepted their gazes calmly and said, The defense can be activated, but the passageway doesn't need to be filled. The Wong clan master was taken aback. Wouldn't that leave us with endless hidden dangers? Suyu smiled. In a situation where we did not know about it, the abandoned tunnels could have become our fatal weakness. But now that we know about it, it is a great weapon to destroy our enemies. Some of the quick-witted people had already understood Suyu's meaning, and shock appeared on their faces. What a big appetite. He actually planned to. Don't think that this kid has a mild temperament, but his ambition is so great that it's not something that you and I can guess. Be careful what you say. Don't offend him. Yes, while we are still thinking about defending the city, he is already thinking about giving the invading enemy a fatal blow. Suyu said, We might as well give them a taste of their own medicine. Since Nitian Hanqing likes to use surprise attacks to win, We might as well use his favorite method to teach him an unforgettable lesson. Everyone understood tacitly, and after some hesitation, the Wang clan master agreed with Su Yu's plan. The abandoned tunnel was tens of thousands of zhang underground, and there was a formation suppressing it. Once the tunnel suddenly collapsed, even a powerful existence of the second heaven would be buried underground forever. If Nitian Hanqing launched a surprise attack using the underground tunnel, he would definitely be able to deal a devastating blow to him. Good. Send someone to arrange the explosion talismans in the tunnel immediately. The Wang clan leader's eyes shone with excitement. Wait. So you stopped him again. Clan master, Wang, didn't dare to be negligent. He cupped his hands and said, Please guide me, little friend Su. Since he had already called it guidance, it was obvious that he was sincerely convinced by Su Yu. Su Yu's words were concise and to the point. He looked around at the crowd and said, It's not that I don't trust you, but how did Nitian Hanqing know about the underground passage? I have been to that passageway before. It is intricate and endless. Even if 1 billion soldiers were to enter it, it would be like a clay ox entering the sea. They would lose their sense of direction. They could accurately find the passageway to Fan Capital in a short period of time. Has anyone ever doubted it? There was a traitor. Everyone was shocked. They were so shocked by the fall of Fan Capital that they had not carefully thought about the mystery behind it. Now that he thought about it carefully, without a spy to plan the direction for them, how could they have used such a surprise attack? There are traitors in the Fan Capital, but it doesn't mean that there aren't any among us. Su Yu's words were reasonable. Even if some people were dissatisfied, they felt that it was reasonable. The Wang clan master looked around at the crowd and said, What little friend Su said makes sense. It's not that I don't trust you, but this is a serious matter. If the news of us ambushing Nitian Hanqing's army is leaked, then all our previous efforts will be in vain. He took out a tool from his sleeves. It was a pitch-black bronze man that emitted strange fluctuations. Everyone suddenly realized that their communication tools were all messed up. Someone tried to send a telepathic message. This is a device that can block messages. Unexpectedly, the quiet voice that was clearly a voice transmission was magnified by 10 times. When it entered everyone's ears, the person who sent the voice transmission was so frightened that his expression changed greatly, and he hurriedly said, I'm not a spy, I'm just curious. The Wang clan leader narrowed his eyes and used a sorcery spell to bind him. This is an emergency. Anyone who is suspicious is not allowed to leave this house. Everyone, please stay in the house. Before the ambush is completed, you're not allowed to leave without permission. Otherwise, you will be regarded as a traitor, and everyone will gang up on you. How about that? The Wang clan master said. In this regard, the 2 temple masters and Ling Wu agreed on the spot. Would the other juniors dare to resist? Naturally, they obeyed. The Wang clan master said, Little friend, I want to ask you a favor. Su Yu said without thinking, Sure, I'll help you ambush Nitian Hanqing. The Wang clan master was stunned. Before he spoke, Su Yu already knew what he was thinking. His heart was even more at ease. Handing over the task to such a person was truly reassuring. It was not that Su Yu was greedy, but he wanted to settle the matter of the wizard tribe as soon as possible and return to the Star River Divine Realm. Strangely, no one objected. Instead, most agreed, other than the Wang clan master himself. No one present would be at ease. The 2 temple masters and Ling Wu, who knew if they had been bribed. Only the Wang clan master himself, whose interests were aligned with the family, would never collude with foreign enemies to invade the Shun capital. But Su Yu was an exception. What he had done had truly won their trust. If Su Yu was suspicious, then no one was trustworthy. I need a troop of soldiers who will absolutely obey my orders. The Wang clan master said, No problem. Qingchen, you will lead my army and carry out the mission with little friend Su. If anyone refuses to obey orders, kill without mercy. Wang Qingchen stood up and said, Yes, sir. The 2 left the hall, and the Wang clan master stroked his beard and said, "I will guard this place with you and supervise each other until the ambush is completed." Everyone nodded slowly, except for one person, who had a strange look on his face. Wang Qingchen selected 10,000 soldiers and went with Su Yu to the former site of the Wang family's mansion. After some digging, they found a long-abandoned underground cave. It was unfathomably deep, and no one knew where it led. Wang Qingchen laughed. "It's still interesting to follow Brother Su, ambushing the God Realm army. Just thinking about it makes me excited. You know, the army of the heaven-defying empire is known to be invincible in the God Realm." Su Yu stared at the abandoned underground passage and said, "Let's get to work." Wang Qingchen waved his hand, and the soldiers behind him immediately took out the explosive runes from the warehouse and stuck them inside the abandoned passage. Now, they just had to wait for the arrival of Nitian Hanqing's army. Then they could have a taste of this wonderful feeling. Unexpectedly, Su Yu said, "Well, then let's detonate it and fill the tunnel to avoid future trouble." What? The soldiers were stunned, and so was Wang Qingchen. "Brother Su, wait. Didn't you say that you wanted to ambush Nitian Hanqing's army in this way? What's the use of detonating it now?" Wang Qingchen couldn't understand. Su Yu said nonchalantly, "It's a big taboo for the military to use the same old tricks, especially since I've personally broken through them and appeared in the tunnel. The plan has already been discovered. If Nitian Hanqing still resorts to this plan, I'll have underestimated him. Nitian Hanqing's surprise attack is no longer an underground tunnel, but another trick," Su Yu said. When Wang Qingchen heard this, he felt that it made sense. Judging from the way Nitian Hanqing deployed his troops, it was often unexpected and unimaginable. It was indeed not his style to use the same strategy twice in a row. "But Brother Su, then why did you say that in that hall?" Wang Qingchen said, "With my father in charge, the news can't be passed out." Su Yu shook his head. "Don't be too superstitious about the tools of the wizard tribe. There are many unimaginable magical powers in the divine path, and the tools of the wizard tribe may not be able to stop them. It's better if there are no traitors among them. If there are traitors, they will be careless when they receive our message, and we can take action. There are only benefits to what I said. There is no harm." Wang Qingchen didn't believe it. The tools of the wizard tribe that his father took out were made with the method personally passed down by the wizard ancestors, without exception. "Come with me, we will make other arrangements and give Nitian Hanqing a big surprise." In a dense forest somewhere in the Blackwood Forest, groups of dark armies quietly shuttled through the forest, quietly without disturbing the nearby creatures. The faces of the soldiers were full of fortitude and coldness, and their actions were decisive and orderly. It was obvious that they were well-trained elite soldiers. In the army, there was a young man in fine clothes with a dark complexion, walking at a moderate speed. His whole body was full of compelling defiance, and he had an air of arrogance. He was Nitian Hanqing. At that moment, a flying bird made of flames shuttled through the void and appeared directly in front of Nitian Hanqing. "Protect the Emperor!" the guard shouted. Nitian Hanqing scolded softly, "What are you panicking about? This is a secret communication technique specially used by the royal family, the art of deception." He crushed the flying bird, and a message jumped out from it and fell into Nitian Hanqing's ears. After listening, Nitian Hanqing looked up to the sky and laughed. "Su Yu, I really can't underestimate you. You really guessed the reason for the destruction of Fan Capital, and you guessed that I might be launching a surprise attack on Shun Capital. It's a pity that I don't intend to use the same plan a second time. I'm afraid your plan to ambush me is going to fail." Nitian Hanqing sneered. "Do you think that only the underground tunnel can break through Shun Capital? You are so wrong. Ha ha ha, after all, I am a little better than you. Su Yu, watch how I destroy Shun Capital and capture you alive." Nitian Hanqing looked up and laughed. After the army left, Two heads popped out of a dark mountain. If Su Yu was here, he would definitely recognize these two people. They were the two generals who were scared away by Su Yu's tricks when he was trapped and killed in the Blackwood Forest. The white-faced general and Guicheng. Among them, the white-faced general had 4 superior extermination cannons taken away by Su Yu. After these two men led the army to defect, they fell into the vast lost nation. Probably because they were heading in the same direction, the two of them met. Because they were in the same boat, the two of them joined forces. Now, they had become an army of more than 1,000 people, and they also had 4 superior extermination cannons. The two of them went out to inquire about the news and accidentally found Nitian Hanqing's army sneaking through the Blackwood Forest, heading straight for Shun capital. Hiss, it's the commander. The white-faced general's face suddenly turned pale. He still had a lingering fear of the cruel commander of the past. Guo Cheng couldn't help but swallow his saliva and said resentfully, "Why are you still calling him commander? Do you think you can go back?" The white-faced general said, "It was a slip of the tongue, a slip of the tongue. Ever since I defected, I knew I couldn't go back. With his temperament, it would be a terrible end." "That's more like it," Guo Cheng said hatefully. "Nitian Hanqing made us afraid to return home, and we can only hide in the deep mountains and forests of the lost nation. From time to time, we have to face ferocious beasts and wizard tribes. Our people are getting fewer and fewer, and sooner or later, we will be exhausted and die in the lost nation." They had planned to find another place to live in the lost nation, but they found the cruelty of reality. The Blackwood Forest was extremely dangerous, far beyond the God Realm. For example, last time they encountered 2 level 3 ferocious beasts and 300 soldiers died. If this continued, they would die sooner or later. The white-faced general's eyes turned. "Why don't we seek refuge with the wizard tribe of Shun capital? Su Yu is doing so well in the wizard tribe. There's no reason we can't, right?" Guo Cheng's eyes lit up, and he said thoughtfully, "It is feasible. But Su Yu was accommodated by them because he was jointly wanted by the 4 great empires. If we seek refuge with them, will they trust us?" The white-faced general smiled mysteriously. "Isn't that simple? What if we inform the wizard tribe about the attack of Nitian Hanqing's army?" Hearing this, Guo Cheng was shocked, and his face lit up. Intuition told him that this method was feasible. After thinking about it, Guo Cheng said, "This is not enough. If possible, we can capture some important people and hand them over to the wizard tribe. This way, the possibility of winning their trust will be higher." The white-faced general said, "Oh, important people. There are not many people important to Nitian Hanqing." Guo Cheng smiled mysteriously. You don't know this. Recently, Nitian Hanqing has married a woman, and she is very beautiful. Now, she is on her way to the military camp. It just so happens that I arranged the route to escort the bride. If there are no accidents, they should have arrived at Songto Mountain by now. If we intercept them now, it will be just in time. General Bai was not surprised by this. It was no secret that Nitian Hanqing liked women. It was not the first time that he had won a bride in the military camp. Every once in a while, there would be brides sent from the God Realm. However, he heard that this bride was different. Not only was she beautiful, but her identity was also special. Chapter 1447. Outside the city of Shun capital, Wang Qingchen and Su Yu stood side by side, and behind them stood 8 generals respectfully. They were the commanders of the soldiers who guarded each side. As old as they were, they respectfully obeyed the orders of the silver-haired youth. "Brother Su, how will Nitian Hanqing attack Shun capital?" Wang Qingchen could not help but be curious. The underground passage had collapsed, and there was a powerful formation outside the city that had been laid out for countless years. Nitian Hanqing had no choice but to break in. Su Yu stood on the clouds, looking down at the surroundings, and said, "His method is not that difficult to guess, but it is too crazy and ordinary people will not think about it." Wang Qingchen understood. glanced at the soldiers behind him, and did not ask any more questions. 8 generals, act according to my orders. This time we will teach Nietian a lesson. This arrangement took 3 days and 3 nights, and Suyu came to the scene from time to time to supervise. Reporting to Marshal Su, we have caught a sneaky enemy of the God realm. A commander came to report, carefully observing Su Yu's expression. Recently, many scouts from the God realm had been captured, and they were all dealt with on the spot by their commanders. This person had come to report to Su. Knowing that something was wrong, Su Yu said, "Go on." The commander then said he claims to surrender to us and has something to offer to show his loyalty. He only asks that the wizard tribe can accept him. A traitor? Su Yu was not surprised. Nietian was too ruthless, and the slightest mistake by his generals would result in death or injury. If some generals with weak minds made mistakes, it was normal for them to defect. You can also deal with this matter on your own. Su Yu granted them this authority. The commander said, "But the other party wants to see the supreme commander, which is you, Marshal Su." Su Yu smiled. "See me? Does he want to offer something special to gain the trust of me, the commander? Well, bring them to the barracks." Soon, outside the main tent of the Central Army, Guo Chang was brought in. "To prevent you from harming the commander, answer outside the tent." The 2 commanders personally guarded him. Guo Cheng saw a figure sitting cross-legged inside the tent and thought, he must be the supreme commander of the Shun capital wizard tribe, the Wang clan master? If I can gain his trust, it won't be a problem for me to find a place to settle down, even if I don't want to achieve meteoric success. Having made up his mind, Guo Cheng immediately prostrated himself on the ground and said, "I am Guo Cheng, the former general under Nietian command. Greetings to the sorcerer tribe's commander-in-chief." Guo Cheng? Su Yu, who was in the tent, had already seen who it was with his transparent eye. He was really surprised. At that time, he used a little trick to escape from their encirclement, and this General Guo Cheng should have escaped. He didn't expect that there would be such a coincidence that he would run to Xinjing to seek refuge. With a hint of playfulness, Su Yu activated his divine power, slightly changed his voice, and said, "So you betrayed Nietian? Guo Cheng knew that the critical moment had come. He answered carefully and righteously, reporting back to the marshal, "We feel deeply that Nietian is cruel and inhumane, so we abandon the dark side for the light." "Oh, how can I believe that you are not spies sent by Nietian?" Guo Chingan suppressed his excitement and presented a small cavern world in the shape of a jade pendant. "My lord, you will understand when you see this." The soldiers passed the jade pendant to Su Yu's palm. His soul swept into the small cavern world, and Su Yu couldn't help but be surprised. "It's her?" In the small cavern world, a woman dressed in a red phoenix robe was imprisoned. She had an exquisite phoenix crown on her head, and her face was delicate and beautiful. It was a bride. What was even more unfortunate was that Su Yu happened to know the bride. She was none other than the princess of the Xue nation in the Northern Territory, Xue Xiaoman. With a look of surprise, Su Yu quietly put away the jade pendant and asked, "Who is she?" Reporting back to the commander, "She is the bride of the marriage alliance between the Northern Territory Xue Nation and the heaven-defying empire, the princess of the Northern Territory Xue Nation, Xue Xiaoman. Her identity is special, and she is a woman that Nietian values. I think if the commander understands Nietian character, you should believe that we are not spies sent by him." What kind of person was Nietian? He was lustful and refused to let go of even his own mother. He could be called a demon among men. In addition, his character was rebellious, and he would never give his woman to an outsider. "I believe in your sincerity," Su Yu said with a faint smile. Guo Cheng, who did not know what was going on outside, was overjoyed. "I have a presumptuous request, and I beg the commander to take me in. I have a group of brothers, as well as another general, who are willing to surrender to the commander and serve you. Su Yu stood up and chuckled across the tent. Since you have surrendered to me with sincerity, I will treat you as distinguished guests. However, what kind of treatment do you want? Guo Cheng's heart was set. The other party was the commander, and once he opened his mouth, no one could stop him. He would never go back on his word. The next step was to discuss the conditions. After thinking about it, Guo Cheng did not dare to ask for too much, but he was not willing to be too low either. He rolled his eyes and said, I heard that Su Yu from the God Realm is treated well in the wizard tribe. We dare not ask for too much, and only ask that we be treated the same as Su Yu. Hearing this, the two commanders' eyes widened, and they thought to themselves, My goodness, you really dare to ask for it? There is only one commander in Sheng capital. Are you going to share half of the military power with him? Presumptuous! One of the commanders scolded, and he was about to drag him away. Guo Cheng was shocked and hurriedly said, Wait. If my request is too high, it's okay to lower it a little. It doesn't matter if our treatment is worse than Su Yu's. The two commanders laughed angrily. A little lower than the commander. Wasn't that the deputy commander? He was still riding on their necks. Seeing that the two commanders were still angry, Guo Cheng was aggrieved and said, Anyway, I am a level 3 deity. Can't I even get the treatment of an ordinary deity? The two commanders did not care, for fear of angering Su Yu, and hurriedly dragged him away. Wait. Inside the tent, Su Yu said, and walked out of the tent with a smile. General Guo Cheng, I trust you have been well since we last met. Guo Cheng was stunned. How did this voice change? And it sounded a little familiar? Guo Cheng took a closer look, and his eyes almost popped out of his sockets. He said in shock, Su Yu. Presumptuous! Call the commander by his name. The two commanders kicked him to the ground. Guo Cheng fell to the ground, and his face was full of shock. You are there, commander? Such a ridiculous thing was presented in front of him. Su Yu waved his sleeves, and a gentle force helped him up. He said with a faint smile, So, I am afraid that if I give you the same treatment as me, the position of commander will not be enough for 3 people. Hearing this, Guo Cheng was shocked and immediately became alert, and his face turned pale. They had besieged Su Yu that day. If he wanted to bring up old scores. Thinking of this, Guo Cheng wanted to cry, but had no tears. This was really like walking 1,000 miles into a tiger's mouth. Chapter 1448. Unexpectedly, Su Yu laughed. General Guo, please rise. You have not caused substantial harm to me, and we are not fated to be together. I have no need to put you to death. On the contrary, I am in need of help. If you can help me, there will be benefits that you can't imagine. Guo Cheng could hardly believe his ears and looked at Su Yu blankly. He had been under Nitian Hanqing for a long time, and he was used to it. The slightest mistake would result in death. He tried to stop Su Yu, but he was forgiven. Are you serious? Absolutely. Guo Cheng's dazed eyes gradually brightened, and he knelt on the ground and kowtowed repeatedly, banging the ground. Su. Marshal Su is magnanimous. Guo Cheng will never forget it. Haha, let the rest of the defectors come together. Speaking of which, we are all in the same boat, Su Yu said. Guo Cheng was moved. Yes, they could not return to the God Realm, and they were all in the same boat. He cupped his fists and immediately returned, bringing General Whiteface and all the soldiers. General Whiteface was also nervous. Fortunately, Su Yu was hospitable and had no intention of harming them. After a banquet, Guo Cheng and General Whiteface looked at each other and said in unison, Marshal Su, if there is anything we can do for you, please let us know. We will not hesitate to go through fire and water. You don't have to go through fire and water. You came to me for safety. How can I let you encounter danger again? Su Yu smiled mysteriously. The two were relieved. They were most afraid that Su Yu would not retaliate, but secretly send them to the front line as cannon fodder. However, although you don't have to go through fire and water, you still have to suffer some hardships, Suyu said slowly. Their hearts, which had just been raised, suddenly sank, and their hearts turned cold. Sure enough, it had come. Gua Cheng said with a bitter face, "Sir, please give me your orders." "Haha, Brother Wang, it's up to you." Suyu smiled at Wang Qingchen. Wang Qingchen patted his chest. "Ha ha ha, I may not be able to do other things, but this hee. Hundreds of millions of miles away from Shun capital, the soldiers of the God Realm were quietly waiting in the Black Forest. Nitian Hanqing stood on a boulder, sitting cross-legged, with a beautiful girl in his arms, kneading her smooth, snow-white skin. Whoosh! 3 figures exuding an earth elemental aura descended and knelt on one knee. "Reporting to the commander, we have already followed the plan and are ready. We are only waiting for the commander's order." Nitian Hanqing reluctantly grabbed a handful of the young girl's soft breasts and reluctantly let go. When he looked at the 3 of them, his lecherous expression changed, and his whole body was filled with a fierce light. "Have you been discovered by Suyu?" "Commander, Suyu is busy making arrangements in the passageway that leads directly to the city. He has no time to care about us. We can be sure of that." Only then did Nitian Hanqing let out a smile. "All right, well done. Once we conquer Xinjing, the 3 of you can have your pick of the beauties in the city." The 3 of them were grateful on the surface, but they were smiling bitterly in their hearts. How could they dare to touch a truly beautiful woman? Fan Capital was the best example. After it was breached, the young witches who were captured were the first to be examined by Nitian Hanqing. He would then pick the rest, and it was their turn to choose. If anyone had taken the beautiful female captive along the way, they would have crossed Nitian Hanqing's line. So far, there were already 3 commanders who could not control their lower bodies, and more than 10 generals of the fourfold heaven with high status, who had been beheaded because of this. No one dared to voice their anger. Swish! Swish! At that moment, 3 soldiers from the God Realm hurriedly flew over from the horizon, covered in blood, as if they had been ambushed. "Commander, this is bad." After the 3 of them landed, they knelt on the ground, trembling with fear, their faces filled with terror. Nitian Hanqing glanced at the clothes of the 3 of them. "Which bride are you transporting?" It's the princess of the Xue nation in the Northern Territory, Xue Xiaoman." "Huh." Nitian Hanqing's eyes suddenly froze. "Then what happened to you?" The 3 of them trembled. "We were ambushed by the rebel army of the God Realm at Zongto Mountain. The escort team was defeated, and the bride was taken away." Bang! Nitian Hanqing suddenly stood up, and a layer of pressure that was visible to the naked eye swept over. The 6 people present were all shaken by the tyrannical pressure, and they spat out blood on the spot. The 3 Earth Attribute soldiers from before were also undeserving of this disaster. "Who did it?" Nitian Hanqing's voice was cold, his face angry and gloomy. "It's the rebel army, Guo Cheng and General Whiteface." Nitian Hanqing's eyes were filled with endless murderous intent. "It's those 2 traitors. Where are they going?" "They went to Shen capital." Nitian Hanqing's eyes became even colder. "Shen capital? Humph. They used my woman as a proof of allegiance." "When did this happen?" "4 days ago." Hearing this, Nitian Hanqing stared at them coldly. "Why are you only telling me now?" "We were chased and separated, and we were lost in the Black Forest for a few days." Just now. Nitian Hanqing's eyes were filled with murderous intent. "There are no useless people under me, Nitian Hanqing. You can't even do such a small thing as escorting the bride. You are worse than useless people." The 3 of them were horrified and hurriedly begged for mercy. "Please have mercy, Commander. We are willing to make amends for our sins." "No need. Death is the best way for you to atone for your sins." Nitian Hanqing attacked violently, and the 3 of them disappeared in an instant, their bodies and souls destroyed. The 3 Earth Attribute soldiers watched in horror killing without saying a word. The 3 soldiers who escorted the bride were Nitti and Hanqing's trusted aides, and they had escorted the bride here many times. Even if they had no merit, they had worked hard. But Nitti and Hanqing killed them without batting an eyelid. The 3 of them felt a chill in their hearts, and they were extremely uneasy, fearing that one day they would end up like him. Pass my order. Prepare to attack Qing capital. With a single order, the tens of millions of troops who were resting immediately became murderous, and the whole army acted in unison, speeding toward Shang capital. On the city wall of Shang capital, Suyu stood at the top of the city wall, staring into the distance. At this time, Wang Qingqin quickly handed over a broken wizard tool and said, "One of the scouts is dead." Crack, crack. After a few breaths, 2 scouts died one after another. Wang Qingqin's eyebrows twitched slightly, and his face gradually became solemn. "It's an enemy attack, and the enemy is in a straight line, extremely fast." Each scout was tens of thousands of miles apart from each other, and they were killed almost at the same time, which was enough to show that they were attacked at the same time. The enemy's front line stretched for more than tens of thousands of miles. How huge was the enemy army! Wang Qingqin's heart trembled. It was the first time he had faced such a vast war, and he had lost his cool. He noticed that the same was true of the 8 commanders, who were no longer calm and collected like before the war. The enemy's offensive was beyond expectations, and it was shocking. However, when he looked at Suyu, he was ashamed and forced himself to calm down. Because at this moment, Suyu was calm, and his eyes were dull and unruffled, as if he had experienced countless similar battles. "Act according to the plan, and Shang capital will be safe," Suyu said lightly, and there was a strange power in his voice that made the soldiers involuntarily calm. "Nitti and Hanqing, is the battle between you and me finally coming?" Suyu's eyes echoed with a trace of coldness. They had collided many times, but not once had they really fought. Chapter 1449. Beep beep. At that moment, a wizard tool flickered rapidly in Suyu's palm. It was a strong warning from a scout 100,000 miles away. Crack! Then the life card in Wang Qingqin's hand made a slight cracking sound. It was the scout who had just sent out an urgent message and died immediately. Beep beep. Soon, the scout 50,000 miles away issued a warning and died soon after. Then it was 30,000 miles, 20,000 miles, 10,000 miles. The pounding heartbeats of the generals could be heard on the city wall. The extreme pressure made them feel extremely heavy. The enemy's momentum was too fierce and terrifying. They were close. 5,000 miles. They could already sense the violent movement coming from the ground, and even the entire city was shaking. The formation seal outside the city was immediately activated, stabilizing the shaking city wall. 3,000 miles. They could only hear the endless roar of thunder, accompanied by the increasingly violent tremors of the earth. It was as if a great calamity was coming, striking deep into the soul. Even if the formation was fully activated, it could not stop the earth-shattering roar. 1,000 miles. They could already see a layer of rolling black waves filling the sky and the earth at the junction of heaven and earth. It was like a boundless wave crashing head-on. Under the endless black waves, the huge Qing capital was like a small boat, seemingly insignificant and could capsize at any time. The momentum that could topple the sky and overturn the seas caused the 8 commanders, who had just calmed down, to fall into extreme panic again. How could there be so many enemies? Not good. Things are not looking good. Even during the war between the wizard tribe and the god realm, there were not so many soldiers. Our formation alone cannot stop them. Panic was like weeds growing wildly in the hearts of the people. On the city wall, some of the pale-faced soldiers could not help but retreat. Just as they retreated, a golden light flew over and beheaded them. Retreat at the last minute, behead. Shake the morale of the army, behead. Su Yu's eyes were cold, and he said in a low, cold voice, The enemy is coming at us fiercely. If you retreat, will they let you go?" The bloody scene and the cold words made the panicking people tremble. Yes, this was not a battle between tribes, where they could surrender if they admitted defeat. This was a war between the wizard tribe and the god realm. There was no surrender, only killing and being killed, defending the city and being slaughtered. The fate of Fan Capital was the best example. Having been provoked by Su Yu's words, the general on the city wall clenched his teeth and suppressed his fear. 500 miles. The sky and earth turned pitch black as they were engulfed by the black waves. That doomsday-like scene made people feel despair. Rumble, the sky was filled with thunder, shaking Xinjiang to the point that it was on the verge of collapse. All the living beings in the city fled into their houses in fear. They hugged each other and prayed the disaster would not befall them. Perhaps their prayers had come true, and a miracle had actually occurred. The black wave that covered the sky and covered the earth rushed towards Shang, capital city. However, right before it reached Xinjiang city, it suddenly split into two and bypassed Xinjiang city. Accompanied by a thunderous roar that whistled past his ears, the black torrent gradually faded away, and so did the thunderous roar. Everyone was stunned. The enemy had left? What happened to the promised great battle? Only the generals on the city wall understood what had happened. The faces of the 8 commanders were pale, and their hearts were still beating wildly, as if they had just passed by the gates of hell. "Commander, that's a beast tide?" One of the commanders couldn't believe his eyes. Su Yu said coldly, "You still can't see clearly at such a close distance." "It was a beast tide." Wang Qingchen shuddered. Was it a beast tide created by Nitian Hanqing? Indeed, the huge black wave was not the army that they had imagined, but countless different kinds of ferocious beasts. The black wood forest radiated across most of the Lost Nation, and there was no shortage of ferocious beasts. They did not know what method they used to drive such a huge beast tide through the black wood forest. Of course, these beast tides were enough to crush a single creature in an instant, but against Shang capital city, they could only take a detour. Why did he do this? Wang Qingchen said, "If the beast tide could destroy a capital, we would have ceased to exist in hundreds of millions of years." With the defense of the 2 capitals, the beast tide was of no help. Su Yu's bright eyes flashed with a deep light, and he said calmly, "Do you still need to think about it?" Of course, it was Nitian Hanqing's old trick, a diversion. I think when the beast tide attracted us, they did something behind us, right? What? Wang Qingchen suddenly looked back at the other side of Shang capital city. They were located in the east, facing Fan capital. If the enemy attacked, in theory, it must be from the east. But in the west, they did not focus on defense. At the west city gate, the giant gate was guarded by the elite soldiers of the wizard tribe, especially the pivot of the formation outside the gate, which was under the protection of 3 white-haired old wizard tribe elders. Whoever wanted to destroy the pivot and the formation would have to step over their dead bodies. At this time, the beast tide came. The boundless momentum was as terrible as the end of the world, shrouding the sky above the west city gate in darkness. It was frightening. At this moment, one of the elders' eyes suddenly became fierce, and the fluctuations of sorcery energy on the surface of his body dissipated, and a burst of divine power broke out. It was an extremely pure, level 3 divine power. He let out a loud roar and suddenly attacked. The 2 elders were not on guard, and their bodies were smashed by him, seriously injured and on the verge of death. "Old Qiu, how are you?" "You are not Old Qiu. Who are you?" They were shocked to find that Old Qiu, who accompanied them day and night, was a citizen of the god realm. The fluctuations of sorcery energy on his body were emitted by the special, close-fitting clothes. "Old Qiu? Haha." The man from the god realm held his hands behind his back and sneered. "I have already sent him on his way." As he spoke, his face changed. It was a special disguise technique. He killed Old Qiu and took his place in the wizard tribe. What was more amazing was that if Su Yu was here, he he would definitely recognize who he was. Impossible. Shun capital has never taken in strangers from the god realm. How did you break in without a sound? Kill old Chiu and take his place. The man from the god realm laughed, mockingly. Why do I have to do it without a sound? My companions and I were brought in by you guys. The two elders were stunned, and immediately their eyes were filled with disbelief. They said in shock, Are you the group of spies that were captured in the city last time? It was because of that incident that Shun capital was under martial law. But weren't you locked up in the prison? How did you get out? The man from the god realm sneered. Someone helped us in secret, of course. As he spoke, his expression turned cold, and his figure attacked the two elders like lightning, injuring them on the spot. Brothers, do it! It's time to show off! The man from the god realm yelled. On the western city wall, a fierce fight broke out immediately, and dozens of screams were heard. More than 30 strong men from the god realm tore off the disguise of the wizard tribe and revealed their identities. With lightning speed, they killed the guards closest to the city gate and quickly took over the opening mechanism of the city gate. The man from the god realm yelled, Open the city gate immediately and welcome the great commander into the city. He himself stepped on the pivot of the formation, intending to destroy it. However, right at that moment, the man from the god realm suddenly felt his body tremble, as if he had been targeted by something terrible. Looking back, it was a superior extermination cannon that was fully charged with energy. It was pushed out from an inconspicuous corner and aimed at the man from the god realm. Behind the superior extermination cannon, there were 2 people standing on each side. They were Guocheng and General Bai. Guocheng put on a fake smile and said, Ha, my lord, you really have incredible foresight. You knew in advance that Nitian Hanqing would use a diversion strategy, and that the West Gate was the main target of Nitian Hanqing's attack. General Bai clapped his hands and laughed, full of admiration. The most amazing thing is that he also knew that there was something wrong with the few spies that he had captured previously. He specifically ordered us to wait here, saying that they would definitely appear here. Hearing that, the man from the god realm was shocked. How could he know that there was something wrong with us? General Bai said, Because my lord felt that you leaked the news too easily. You spilled the news that Fan Capital was surrounded by the god realm army so easily. That was your biggest flaw. The man from the god realm was surprised. Who is your commander? Guo Cheng chuckled. Don't tell me you don't know Su Yu's name? What? It's him, the Great Western Alliance master. The man from the god realm turned pale with fright. At the same time, he was filled with hatred. His face was filled with unforgettable hatred. Guo Cheng and General Bai looked at each other. The Great Western Alliance master? This man was very valuable. They had to capture him alive and hand him over to Su Yu. Brothers, light up the weapons. The 2 generals yelled and pushed out another 3 superior extermination cannons from the corner. The huge black muzzles of the cannons shrouded the crowd. 4 superior extermination cannons were enough to destroy them 4 times over. The result was no surprise. They all surrendered. The small rebellion was subdued unknowingly. However, if Su Yu had not predicted the enemy's moves, the small rebellion would have been enough to destroy Shun capital. The formation was broken, the city gates were opened, and Shun capital would have the same fate as Fan capital. As early as when they attacked Fan capital, they had already arranged for people from the god realm to sneak into the city. This was not an impromptu plan. It was obvious that the plan was far-reaching and the strategy was appropriate. Outside the West Gate, in the Black Forest, the endless black tide of beasts parted again, bypassing the black-armored army and escaping. The black-armored army was tens of millions, each of them fierce and capable. They were the true elites of the heaven-defying empire. As expected, they were lying in ambush in the direction of the West Gate, waiting for the signal from inside to rush into the city immediately. Unfortunately, when the time came, there was no signal. Nitian Hanqing laughed mockingly. Have we been discovered? Suyu, you are quite smart. You even discovered this backup plan. You are qualified to compete with me on the battlefield. However, the show has just begun. My real surprise is yet to come. Suyu led the many generals and moved to the west gate. Guo, Cheng, and General Bai immediately presented a group of captives. Their faces flushed. My lord, we followed your arrangements and captured this group of prisoners who should have been in the dungeon. Looking at them, the 8 commanders quickly recognized them, especially Zhang Laodao, who had personally captured them. He said in surprise, weren't they imprisoned in the dungeon? Who let them out? But he quickly shut his mouth because their commander, Suyu, had a strange look in his eyes. He stared straight at the captive people from the God Realm and said with a faint smile, "This world is really small. I didn't expect to meet you outside the Xing River." Chapter 1450. He stared at Suyu, his eyes full of hatred. His demonic energy surged as he said, "It really is you, Suyu. I didn't expect the traitor caught in the city half a month ago to be you, Admiral Whitebone." Suyu said, "One of the 10 great generals of the demon dimension, together with the demonic god of 6 paths, the book deity and Kalin, against Suyu. In the end, he was thrown into the whirlpool of the spirit pool and fell into the lost ancient god realm. He didn't expect to meet him here." Admiral Whitebone said, "You are as troublesome as ever. You saw through us so easily." When he heard that the traitors were caught and quickly confessed that Fan Capital was surrounded, Suyu was suspicious. Would the God Realm send traitors who couldn't withstand interrogation? At the very least, they should have placed a seal in their minds. Once they were caught, they would be killed instantly. It was as if they had been caught on purpose. Combined with the fact that Nitti and Hanqing liked to use unexpected methods, Suyu was on guard and set up an ambush. Sure enough, there was something wrong with their capture. "But don't even think about getting any information out of me." Admiral Whitebone's body suddenly shook, as if something hidden deep within his body had been shattered. The surface of his body quickly turned jet black, and from jet black to dark purple. He had been poisoned. "Suyu," Admiral Whitebone laughed grimly. "You have made us so miserable. Just you wait. Someone will come to take your life." After saying that, he foamed at the mouth, his eyes rolled back, and he died instantly. The rest of the captives also died from the poison. It happened so suddenly that they were caught off guard. In the blink of an eye, there was only a group of corpses left on the ground. Suyu was lost in thought. Who was the person that Admiral Whitebone said would come to take his life? Nitti and Guyan? The 4 great empires of the God Realm? Zhang Laodao examined the corpses, and his face sank. "I was careless. They were poisoned in their internal organs, so they didn't notice when they were captured. What a shame that I didn't get them to confess to the traitor who released them from the dungeon. Although they were dead, they still left a hidden danger." Recalling the danger here, several commanders were worried. If Suyu hadn't been so far-sighted, the city would have been conquered by the soldiers of the God Realm. Wang Qingqin couldn't help but laugh out loud. "Brother Su, you have a godlike foresight. No matter how good that Nitti and Hanqing is at commanding his troops, it is still child's play in front of you." The commanders agreed with him. What they were more looking forward to was whether Nitti and Hanqing would give up after he had foiled his conspiracy. Expressionless, Suyu walked over the corpses and came to the top of the city wall. Looking at the silent blackwood forest, he said, "Nitti and Hanqing has been planning this for a long time. He definitely has more than one plan to attack the city. This is just the beginning. Don't be careless." Before he finished speaking, an ink-black pillar of light suddenly shot out from the black forest in front of him. Tens of thousands of runes flickered inside the light pillar, and they actually contained a special power that could restrain the formation. Bang! The beam of light bombarded the array formations, causing hundreds of them to tremble at the same time, emitting a rapid buzzing sound. What is this?" Zhang Laodao and the other commanders turned pale with fright. A single strike had shaken over 100 formations. They had never heard of such a bizarre power. There was a rumble in the Black Forest. Large swathes of trees collapsed, and the earth cracked open. A giant pangolin with a metallic luster drilled out from the ground. High-level formations were carved on the surface of the pangolin's body, constantly rotating. A black cannon barrel, 10 feet thick, protruded from the pangolin's mouth. It was rapidly accumulating pitch-black energy, ready to fire a second shot. A weapon of the ancient civilization. Su Yu's brows loosened slightly. The metallic pangolin had no life force, and it relied entirely on the special crystals in its body to provide energy. Zhang Laodao stared at it for a long time, his face extremely somber. I remember now. This thing appeared during the Great War between the wizard tribe and the god realm. It's a top-notch weapon of the civilization that specializes in breaking formations, the formation destroying beast. Back then, how many impregnable tribes had their divine statues easily destroyed by the formation destroying beast? Even the defenses of Mai Sheng capital were almost penetrated by the formation destroying beast. His soliloquy caused everyone present to turn pale with fright, their faces solemn. Sure enough, Su was right. Niti and Hanqing had come prepared, and there was more than one way to attack the city. However, for many years, the formations of Mai Sheng capital have been reinforced, and they're no longer the same as they were in the past. A formation-destroying beast can do nothing to us. Unexpectedly, just as he finished speaking, another violent movement came from the Blackwood Forest. Another patch of trees collapsed, and a formation-destroying beast drilled out from the ground. The second one. Rumble. Another patch of the Blackwood Forest collapsed. The third one. Rumble. Rumble. One after another, the entire Blackwood Forest in the west continued to collapse, and formation-destroying beasts drilled out from the ground one after another. There were more than a dozen of them. Patter! The long knife in Zhang Laodao's hand fell to the ground abruptly, crashing against the deathly silent city wall with a distant echo. One of them could shake the city wall, and a dozen of them. The great army of the god realm did not give them any time to consider. Once the dozen formation-destroying beasts appeared, they immediately launched a powerful attack to destroy the formations. Rumble! Dozens of pitch-black light beams bombarded the city wall. The formations were no longer vibrating, but began to shatter. The 3 outermost formations were the first to be blasted into pieces. At the same time, the enemy's second wave of attack came. Boom! Another 3 layers of defense formations were shattered. If this went on, all the formations would be destroyed in less than an hour. Su Yu said, "Activate the backup formation." The 3 commanders immediately came to the pivot of the formation and instilled powerful sorcery energy into it. The 3 broken formations recovered rapidly after being replenished with energy. Only then did the people on the city wall feel slightly more at ease. Take turns. Continue to replenish sorcery energy, Su Yu ordered. Zhang Laodao and the other 2 commanders took turns to replenish sorcery energy into the pivot to speed up the recovery of the formations. Only then did they manage to keep the formations from being further destroyed. However, it would be disadvantageous to Su Yu's side in the long run. The sorcery energy required to replenish the formations was immense, and it required the sorcery energy of a level 3 wizard. Their level 3 wizards were the main fighting force. If they were to be depleted like this, it would be a conspiracy. General Gua, General Bai. Su Yu bellowed. The 2 of them understood tacitly and leaped onto the arena with 4 superior extermination cannons. Including Su Yu's 4, there were a total of 8 superior extermination cannons. Brothers, follow us! The 2 generals led 8 soldiers and leaped off the city wall. They passed through the formations and activated the superior extermination cannons at the foot of the city wall. 8 superior extermination cannons, imbued with immense power, were fired at the same time. However, they were not shooting at the formation-destroying beasts, but in the same direction. 8 streaks of violent, destructive energy bombarded an inconspicuous corner of the Black Forest from a distance. However, when the first streak of energy landed in that direction, a pale yellow defensive light screen appeared and blocked the attack. The people on the city wall were overjoyed. It meant that the target of the cannons was definitely not an ordinary person. It was most likely where the commander was. The defensive light screen could withstand the first attack. But what about the second, the third, all the way up to the 8th? Boom! With a dull thud, the pale yellow light screen shattered abruptly. A few furious roars erupted from within, and more than a dozen extremely powerful deity auras flickered. They were 13 level 3 deities with powerful auras. They were protecting a dark-skinned, wild-looking young man as they flew into the sky. Nitian Hanqing. The 8 commanders all recognized the wild-looking young man. He was none other than the commander who led the great army of the god realm this time, Nitian Hanqing. Su Yu's face was expressionless as he ordered indifferently, "Continue. Don't stop." How could Guicheng and General Bai dare to stop? They continued to order the soldiers to activate the superior extermination cannons. Boom! 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 Another 8 streaks of destructive energy bombarded Nitian Hanqing. "Great Marshal, retreat!" The 13 commanders' expressions were grave. No matter how hard they tried, they couldn't understand how their location could be accurately discovered. As they spoke, the 3 commanders flew out and joined forces to block the bombardment of the superior extermination cannon. However, the power of the superior extermination cannon was too strong for them to resist. They only managed to resist for a moment before they were blasted into dust by the superior extermination cannon. Taking advantage of the opportunity, Nitian Hanqing and the remaining 10 commanders escaped from the bombardment range of the superior extermination cannon. Nitian Hanqing's eyes were cold as he looked into the depths of the sky. There was a faintly discernible eye overlooking the earth, as if it could see through them. They fled, but the superior extermination cannon did not stop its attack. Under Su Yu's precise positioning, it continued to bombard the important personnel of the army. Not long after, 4 or 5 level 3 commanders suffered from the destructive blow and perished on the spot. The number of ordinary soldiers who died could not be counted. No matter how well they hid, they could not escape the destructive blow of the 8 civilizational weapons. The casualties were extremely heavy. Looking at the situation, the great army of the god realm had to retreat. However, at this moment, Su Yu suddenly ordered, "Come back immediately." Guicheng and General Bai were in the midst of killing and were slightly stunned. However, due to Su Yu's authority, they could only lead the soldiers and the 8 superior extermination cannons back resentfully. Unexpectedly, as soon as they left, dozens of destructive forces shot out from the depths of the Black Forest. That was also the power of the superior extermination cannon. Another patch of forest was flattened, revealing the long-hidden superior extermination cannons lined up in a row. There were as many as 30 of them. The pitch-black holes were aimed at the place where Guicheng and General Bai had just stood. The 2 of them looked at each other and shuddered. Fortunately, they retreated quickly. Otherwise, they would have died there together with the cannons. Nitian Hanqing frowned slightly and said coldly, "So you really has some tricks up his sleeves." He forced me to use the siege weapons. The original intention of the 30 superior extermination cannons was to be launched immediately the moment the formation was broken. They were to kill all the leaders on the city walls, leaving them without a leader. This tactic was extremely effective in Fan Capital. However, Su Yu's precise attack, combined with the heavenly eyes, forced Nitian Hanqing to expose their existence. "Execute the 3rd plan," Nitian Hanqing yelled. "Attack the city from the front." Walala! In the Black Forest, the neat and sonorous sound of metal rubbing against each other rang out. It was the sound of millions of soldiers in black armor, waiting for orders to get up and prepare for battle. Waves of murderous aura erupted from the Black Forest. Vaguely, countless heads could be seen moving in the Black Forest like a great river, rolling rapidly. Chapter 1451. Boom! Boom! The formation destruction beasts and the 30 superior extermination cannons fired at the same time. The peerless destructive power bombarded the defensive formation, shattering 10 layers in an instant. Focus all your energy on one point. Fire! Nitian Hanqing commanded from afar. Suddenly, the earth-shattering bombardment concentrated on the tear, shattering another 10 layers. 20 of the 100 layers of defensive formations were shattered in an instant. Gather the level 3 wizards in the city and take turns to repair the formation. Su Yu ordered immediately. Several commanders took over and immediately instilled sorcery energy into the formation. 10 layers of the formation were quickly restored. However, right at that moment, the Black Army surged out of the Black Forest like a tidal wave and squeezed into the gap in the formation. They were all carrying artifacts that could restrain the formation, which greatly hindered the recovery of the formation. Taking advantage of the opportunity, the enemy bombarded again and shattered another 10 layers of the formation. Part of the enemy army sped up and poured in, while the rest of the army interfered with the repair of the formation with the artifacts they carried. They advanced step by step, and no matter how hard the formation in the city tried to repair it, it was useless. This was what Su Yu meant when he said that the most difficult moment had come. Northwest Army, get ready to attack. Following Su Yu's order, Zhang Laodao, one of the 8 commanders, gripped his long knife and led 1,000,000 soldiers to the bottom of the city wall. They confronted the surging Black Army through the formation that was about to be broken. 10 breaths later, with a violent roar, a huge gap was torn open in the formation. The murderous army of the God Realm approached the city like a flood and ferocious beast, attacking the city wall with the divine weapons in their hands. Combined with the superior extermination cannons, they instantly blasted a huge gap in the city wall. However, what awaited them was the long-prepared wizard army. The wizard army, which was surging with dark, gray sorcery energy, collided with the black tide. The 2 armies quickly engaged in a fierce battle. The enemy's superior extermination cannons and formation destruction beasts stopped attacking to prevent further damage, and turned to attack another area. Soon, another large gap was torn open in the formation, and the endless Black Army poured in. Northeast Army, attack! Su Yu yelled. Another army of 1,000,000 soldiers poured into the narrow gap and fought with the invading army. Southwest Army, Southeast Army, North Army, get ready. Su Yu issued military orders in an orderly manner. In the face of a precarious situation, he did not panic. At this moment, the only person who could not panic was Su Yu. As the city walls were breached one after another, the soldiers in the city scattered into the gaps and attacked the invading army with all their might. Both sides were in a killing frenzy, especially the sorcerer tribe. All of them used their lives and blood to fight with their last bit of strength. Even if they were to die, they had to injure the enemy a little and fight for a chance for their compatriots behind them. This was because if the Divine Realms army was defeated, they would lose a victory. If they failed, they would lose billions of their compatriots. The 2 sides fought for 3 days and 3 nights, and both sides suffered casualties in the hundreds of thousands. The boundless number of corpses had raised the ground by more than 100 feet. The soldiers behind them all stood on the corpses of their compatriots and continued to fight. The blood that flowed like a river evaporated under the high temperature of the scorching sun, forming layers of blood-colored mist that shrouded the entire Shin capital. From afar, it looked like a city of blood. It was extremely demonic. The God Realm soldiers had been attacking for a long time without success, so they had long since shifted their focus to the north, south, east, and west, fighting in all 4 directions. Although the resistance of the sorcerer tribe in Shengjing was strong and they were well prepared, the army of the God Realm had been planning this for a long time. The number of soldiers was as high as 10 million. When one side's soldiers were almost wiped out, a new army would immediately enter and continue fighting. On the other hand, the wizard tribe's army was limited in strength, less than 30% of the enemy. After a long period of fighting, the fatal weakness of the wizard tribe's lack of manpower was gradually exposed. There were already 8 gaps in the city walls that had been breached by the Divine Realm's army, and they had broken into the city. Hearing this news, the people of Shun Capital were in a panic and scattered in all directions. Nitian Hanqing was even more sarcastic. The initiative has fallen into my hands. Su Yu, even if you are the reincarnation of the god of war, don't even think about turning the tables. At this moment, a few more reports of success came in. The God Realm's army was like a hot knife through butter, and the wizard tribe soldiers were retreating in defeat. Half of the gaps had fallen, and more than 5 million God Realm's army had poured into the city. Half of the army had broken into the city. What did this mean? It meant that the outcome had been decided. Nitian Hanqing clapped his hands and laughed. All-out attack. Rumble. However, right at this moment, the entire earth rumbled, and a golden statue of a deity suddenly broke out of the ground beneath the city. The statue of a deity was 10 million feet tall, piercing through the clouds, extremely majestic. That face belonged to the wizard ancestor of the wizard tribe. Waves of pure wizard power emitted waves that made people's hearts palpitate. Looking at this object, Nitian Hanqing's eyes narrowed. The divine artifact of the Wang clan of Shun Capital, the sky-reaching ancestral statue. Isn't this thing lost? The Chu clan of Fan Capital had the legacy of the wizard ancestor, and so did the Wang clan. However, the legacy of the wizard ancestor of the Wang clan was rumored to have been lost a long time ago. At least that was the information Nitian Hanqing received. After the sky-reaching ancestral statue appeared, it immediately shot out a thick golden light, enveloping the entire Shun Capital. From afar, it looked like a giant inverted bowl, firmly protecting Shun Capital within it. Some of the God Realm soldiers who were rushing in through the gap were caught off guard and were crushed by the descending golden light. The soldiers who had not entered immediately tried to bombard it, only to find that the defense of this layer of golden light was extremely strong. The soldiers who had already entered found themselves trapped in the city, losing contact with the outside world. Nitian Hanqing frowned slightly. Formation destruction beasts, superior extermination cannons, fire at the same time. However, the power that could easily destroy 10 layers of formations fell on the golden light screen, but it only caused a ripple. Nitian Hanqing suddenly stood up, and his expression finally changed. Attack the city, but at this moment endless screams sounded in the city. Through the golden light screen, it could be seen that under the golden light, all the soldiers who were not from the wizard tribe were emitting smoke, as if they were about to burn. It was the divine power in their bodies that was ignited. The sky-reaching ancestral statue was the last trump card of the Wang clan. It was originally used to restrain the creatures in the Red Dust Forbidden Lands. If the Red Dust Forbidden Lands were to be broken one day, this statue would be the last weapon to destroy the creatures in the Red Dust Forbidden Lands. The God Realm's army was burning. Not to mention their combat power, they could not even protect themselves. All of them panicked and looked for an area where the golden light could not reach. On the other hand, the wizard tribe's army was not affected at all. They split up and chased after the God Realm's army that was fleeing in the city. The wizard tribe in the city also chased after the soldiers who had fallen into their trap, like dogs that had fallen into the water. Another 3 days and 3 nights passed. When the power of the sky-reaching ancestral statue was exhausted and the golden light screen disappeared, only less than 100,000 soldiers from the God Realm managed to escape alive. The rest were all buried in the city. A total of 5 million soldiers, more than half of the elites of the God Realm's army, were all lost. Such heavy casualties were definitely not part of Nitian Hanqing's third plan. Nitian Hanqing's eyes were filled with boundless coldness. All the personnel in charge of Shun Capital's intelligence. Execute them all. Leave no one alive. Soon, the smell of blood wafted from the army, as well as a few sporadic sounds of resistance. The army was dead silent. The unprecedented heavy blow made them, who had been invincible all this time, feel extremely frustrated. Since entering the Lost Nation, their casualties had been less than 100,000. However, they had suffered 5 million casualties in Shun Capital. The strong contrast had dealt a heavy blow to their invincible fighting spirit. Nitian Hanqing looked down at his soldiers coldly and said, "A weak army is bound to be defeated. They are no longer of any use." He raised his eyes and looked at the silhouette of the silver-haired youth who had been standing on the city wall until now. His murderous intent was deep. "You killed half of my soldiers. You are indeed the one who blocked my path of defying my will. Pass down the order. Activate the final plan." Nitian Hanqing took a deep breath, and the depths of his eyes were filled with violence. "I did not want to take this step. Suyu, you will be buried with all the creatures in Shun Capital." In the city, the ground was covered with corpses and blood. Although the soldiers of the God Realm had been annihilated, the casualties of the wizard tribe could not be ignored. At a glance, it was full of wounded soldiers. Wang Qingchen was covered in blood, and the wizard tribe knife in his hand had been rolled up. It had been scrapped. His body was also covered with many wounds, and he looked quite miserable. But his expression was full of excitement, and he licked his lips. "At the cost of 30,000, we have annihilated 5 million enemy troops. It is really an unimaginable achievement. It was all thanks to Brother Su's command that we were able to complete this trick." It turned out that this was also one of Su Yu's plans. All the previous stubborn resistance and the collapse of the city were all intentional. He had used this opportunity to lure the army of the God Realm into the city, and with the help of the Wang clan's great killing weapon, the sky-reaching ancestral statue, they were annihilated. If not for this, with Nitian Hanqing's cunning, he would never have been fooled. Su Yu shook his head. "I did not kill a single enemy, so I did not get any credit. The ones who should be thanked are the wizards who sacrificed themselves." Wang Qingchen said, "Brother Su, rest assured that the Wang family will compensate the families of the soldiers who were injured and killed, and will never let their sacrifice be in vain. They contributed to the victory of this war." However, after a long silence, Su Yu took a light breath. "It is true that they sacrificed themselves, but victory it is too early. Nitian Hanqing's final move has not been shown yet." As soon as his voice fell, Su Yu was surrounded by silence. The commanders around him, as well as Wang Qingchen, were all rooted to the ground like wooden stakes. Looking at the damaged city walls that were about to collapse, Wang Qingchen swallowed with difficulty. Such a huge offensive, and it is still not considered a great killing weapon. Su Yu shook his head slightly. "It is not." Everyone held their breath. If that did not count, how fierce and terrifying would Nitian Hanqing's final move be? Su Yu waved his wrist and summoned the sacred Kylin in front of everyone. "How are the preparations going these days?" Su Yu asked. The sacred Kylin laughed and said, "It has been prepared for a long time. The creatures of Jojo are very grateful to you. Although this task is a bit hard, as long as it is something you need to do, everyone will rush to help. Rest assured, everything has been done according to your plan." Su Yu's inclination to Jojo's resources had allowed Jojo to take off and enter an unprecedented era of prosperity. Deities were born one after another, and there were as many as hundreds of prospective deities. Their respect for Su Yu was unparalleled. Su Yu nodded slightly. "Well, thank them for me," the sacred Kylin said. "Okay, look for us at any time if you need anything." As he spoke, he returned to the Jojo cavern world in front of everyone. Wang Qingchen's eyes flashed with surprise. "Brother Su, what have you prepared?" Chapter 1452. Wang Qingchen could no longer suppress the curiosity in his heart. He said, "Brother Su, the war has reached its final stage. Can we solve the mystery now? What kind of unimaginable means will Nitian Hanqing use?" Now that things had come to this, it did not matter if the news was leaked. If I were him, the quickest, simplest, and most unexpected method would be— So you said slowly. His voice was still echoing when the city wall beneath his feet suddenly trembled and collapsed rapidly. The generals on the city wall flew away in shock, their eyes filled with shock. They could vaguely feel that an unimaginable explosive energy was about to erupt beneath Shun capital. The snakes, insects, rats, and ants in the city were frightened away, fleeing out of the city. Although they were weak, their premonitions of unknown forces were stronger than the people of the wizard tribe. The ferocious beasts that had been reared in the city howled in unison, breaking free from their shackles and escaping from Shun capital. Some of the wizard tribe members who had practiced premonition sorcery, combined with the unusual behavior of the living creatures, could vaguely sense that an unimaginable disaster was coming. They ran around the city in panic, warning the people of the wizard tribe to leave Shun capital as soon as possible. Far away from Shengjing, it was clearly dusk, but rainbows rose from the horizon in all directions. Sometimes they were bright, and sometimes they were dim, illuminating Shengjing City into a world of 7 colors. From afar, it was magnificent but also eerie. Wang Qingchen's pupils shrank. What happened? What caused the atmosphere to change drastically, and strange rainbows to appear continuously? Zhang Laodao stared the ground. As carefree as he was, his old face was covered with beads of sweat. What is that under the city wall? The explosive energy that could destroy heaven and earth and collapse the world sent chills down the spines of those who sensed it. If not for Su Yu's supreme majesty, those who were not strong-willed would have left the battlefield and fled for their lives. Su Yu's gaze was profound, as if he could see through everything hidden beneath the earth. He said, "It's an abandoned tunnel." Wang Qingchen and the 8 commanders said, "Didn't you blow up the abandoned tunnel leading to the city and completely block it?" Shaking his head, Su Yu pointed into the distance. "What I am talking about are the countless tunnels that surround Shun capital. In the past, the tunnels dug by the wizard tribe near Shun capital were intricate and complicated. With Shun capital as the center, they covered a radius of hundreds of millions of miles, under the ground that you can't see with your naked eyes. There are tunnels like spider webs." Su Yu stood high in the sky, his eyes pale. He saw what they couldn't see. Wang Qingchen said, "We know this, but so what?" "What do you think?" Su Yu asked. "If all the tunnels are destroyed at the same time, what do you think will happen?" All the passages. Wang Qingchen was stunned. For a moment, he could not understand the chill of all. When the scene of the entire cobweb-like tunnel being destroyed appeared in his mind, he suddenly shivered and took a deep breath. He's going to create a super space crack. Looking down from above, Shengjing City was like a small prey embedded in a giant spider web. It was as if a spider's web had collapsed at the same time and millions of lands had been destroyed at the same time. The destructive power produced was enough to create a super space crack that covered a radius of hundreds of millions of miles. In front of such a crack, Shun capital was nothing more than a speck of dust. It could not withstand the slightest bit and would be devoured. Zhang Laodao trembled all over, his voice trembling. How did they do it? Is it possible to destroy so many tunnels at the same time? Su Yu nodded. Impossible. Even if Nitian Hanqing took action, it would be impossible. Without waiting for them to breathe a sigh of relief, Su Yu said, "But if it's a super civilization weapon that has never appeared in the world, anything is possible." Sensing the increasingly ferocious destructive energy underground, they believed Su Yu's words without any conditions. Nitian Hanqing had used an unknown civilization weapon. At that moment, the 7-colored rainbow in the sky was suddenly extinguished. What replaced it was a vast expanse of darkness that had no luster. It was a blackness that devoured everything. It was like a black hole, swallowing everything around it and crushing it into dust. The pitch-black area was initially only the size of a rainbow, shaped like a black half-moon hanging in the sky. However, it rapidly expanded and gradually revealed its true ferocious appearance, a crack that looked like a giant mouth that could swallow the sky. In 8 directions, rapidly expanding space cracks appeared at the same time, intersecting with each other in the sky, quickly tearing the sky into pitch-black fragments. With Shang Capital as the center, the world in all 4 directions had been reduced to space cracks. Moreover, the cracks rapidly expanded toward Shang Capital from 8 directions. From afar, it looked like 8 long pitch-black knives that spanned hundreds of millions of mountains and rivers were slashing toward Shang Capital. Looking around, they had been surrounded by the space cracks. There was no way out, only death awaited them. The creatures in the city had despair in their eyes. Wang Qingqin and the 8 commanders looked at the unprecedented scene of destruction, and they were extremely shocked. Nitian Hanqing, who had retreated hundreds of millions of miles away, stood outside the space cracks with his 5 million troops, watching the scene from afar. Behind them, an extremely huge, simple-looking and exaggerated flying artifact slowly flew away, flying toward Shang Capital. A trace of residual destructive energy followed the path of its departure, spreading along the way. Nitian Hanqing looked into the distance at Shang Capital, which was no longer in sight. His whole body was bursting with overbearing defiance. This is what happens to those who refuse to obey me. All living beings will perish. Su Yu, goodbye. Nitian Hanqing shook his head and said, "It's a pity that you can't shake my way of defiance. You are destined to be a stepping stone, not a stumbling block. Let's go." Nitian Hanqing flung his cloak, setting off a boundless wind and clouds. He led the 5 million troops to the final destination, Shang Capital. As for Shang Capital, it had been obliterated in the dust. However, just as they were about to move, suddenly a boundless blood-red light gushed out from the depths of the ground behind them. From the depths of the ground, it rose into the sky, shrouding Nitian Hanqing and the 5 million troops. They were caught off guard and had no defense at all. Nitian Hanqing's eyes narrowed. This red light, is it the power of space? A glimmer of light flashed in his eyes, and Nitian Hanqing made a prompt decision. Evacuate this area, don't stay. However, no matter how far they leaped forward, the red light shot out from the ground. Nitian Hanqing finally noticed that something was wrong. He stomped hard on the ground, and a crack suddenly appeared. From the depths of the ground, a rune was squeezed out. Within the rune, there was a drop of diluted divine blood. Father's divine blood? Nitian Hanqing was slightly shocked. This was extracted from the superior extermination cannon. Then he stomped again and squeezed out another rune. The divine blood of the World Annihilation Emperor? Nitian Hanqing was shocked again. This divine blood was most recently found in the capital of the Empire of Darkness, and the person who has it is Su Yu. Nitian Hanqing's pupils shrank, and a strong sense of uneasiness rose in his heart. He was like a prey that had fallen into a trap. That sense of danger was stronger than ever before. Retreat. We have fallen into a trap. Nitian Hanqing's heart was thumping wildly, and his intuition told him that an unprecedented crisis was approaching. He had been busy with the renovation for the past 3 days, and had no time to eat, so he had no energy to write. Chapter 1453. However, it was too late to retreat now. At the top of the sky, a huge blood-red eye emerged quietly. This was the divine path's eye of space. Compared to the wine red of the past, it was now blood-red, looking exceptionally eerie. Deep underground, the runes wrapped in the blood of the Emperor burst open, detonating the divine blood within. The eye of space appeared even redder. This was the blood of the emperor, which could enhance the power of the divine path. One drop was precious, let alone tens of thousands of drops. This was what Suyu had asked the creatures of Jojo to do, to secretly arrange the divine blood outside Shin Capital. Wherever the divine blood appeared, the power of space in the area illuminated by the Eye of Space would increase. Moreover, it was an unprecedented increase. This move consumed 90% of the divine blood that Suyu had stored, but the effect was astonishing. The mutated Eye of Space erupted with the ultimate power of space, covering a radius of hundreds of millions of miles, with more and more divine blood erupting. The power of space accumulated in the Eye of Space reached its limit. The atmosphere fluctuated, and the world became blurred, as if the boundaries had been blurred by the power of space. Shrouded in the blood-red light, Nitian Hanqing and the 5 million troops all felt their heads become heavy and their feet become light. They were caught in a boundless space change. Nitian Hanqing's face was pale, and a huge sense of crisis was beating wildly in his heart. Finally, as the huge blood-red eye slowly closed, a superspatial fluctuation that covered hundreds of millions of miles was born. Nitian Hanqing, the 5 million troops, and the endless mountains and rivers were all transported by the power of space in an instant, disappearing from where they stood. Shin Capital, which was surrounded by the crack of space and was about to be destroyed, was also transported away by the power of space at the critical moment. Rumble. As Shin Capital suddenly landed, the city walls trembled as if a huge earthquake had occurred, shattering 90% of the buildings. The glorious Shin Capital was almost instantly razed to the ground. Although there were not too many casualties, it had been reduced to ruins. When the spiritual energy of the world subsided and the dust settled, the wizards who had survived the disaster walked out of the ruins, looking at the clear sky with excitement. What happened? Yes, where is the crack of space? We didn't die. No, what was that blood-red light? They could not understand how they could survive that boundless crack of death. Only Wang Qingchen and the 8 commanders on the city wall saw it up close. It was Suyu who had performed a magical power. It was a spatial divine ability that spanned billions of miles. They were not the only ones who were shocked. Even the emperors of the 4 great dynasties of the ancient god realm found it hard to believe that a space divine ability of such a large area could be used. Suyu slowly closed his reddened right eye, and the giant eye in the sky also gradually dissipated. Wang Qingchen looked around in shock. Where are we? His voice came to an abrupt halt. Hundreds of millions of miles behind them was the horrifying space crack created by Nitian Hanqing. At the critical moment, Suyu paid a huge price to teleport the whole city out. Then, where are Nitian Hanqing and the others? Wang Qingchen asked. If he remembered correctly, this was where Nitian Hanqing and his army were. Suyu turned around and looked at the crack in space. Wang Qingchen was slightly stunned. When he realized what was going on, his expression changed drastically and his lips trembled. They were teleported inside. After receiving Suyu's gentle nod, Wang Qingchen's lips twitched and his whole body trembled. That was excitement, agitation. The 8 commanders were also very excited and said, Nitian Hanqing and his 5 million troops were teleported along with us and perished in the crack of space that he created. More or less, Suyu said expressionlessly. Everyone cheered and celebrated the final victory. What was even more ridiculous was that the enemy did not die in their hands, but in the crack that they had created to destroy everything. Ha ha ha. It's true that the evils of heaven can be avoided, but the evils of one's own actions cannot be avoided. He wanted to slaughter all the creatures in Shin Capital, leaving nothing behind, but in the end he buried himself. Ha ha. If he had not been so vicious and left us a glimmer of hope, we would not have fallen into such a desperate situation now. The great battle lasted for 6 days and 6 nights. Both sides fought with everything they had, and it could be said that they were exhausted. What was particularly gratifying was that, In a situation where they were obviously at a disadvantage, they turned defeat into victory step by step, and even thwarted the enemy's final plot, burying the enemy within. It was a miracle. Many of the wizard tribesmen looked at Suyu. His body was not majestic, but in their hearts at this moment, it was comparable to the Moonwatch sect leader. Among the crowd, only one person understood Suyu. Wang Qingchen said, "Brother Su, what do you mean by more or less? Could they still survive in that kind of space crack?" Suyu said, "Most of the 5 million troops could not survive, but Nitian Hanqing. The deeper he is in a desperate situation, the stronger his path of defiance becomes. Others will certainly die, but he may not." Almost as soon as Suyu's voice fell, in the boundless dark crack a white light flashed. It was an arrow full of indomitable defiance, full of indomitable will to kill those who were disobedient. The long arrow pierced through the dark crack, creating a passage. A young man with a torn cloak and broken armor flew out from it, his hair disheveled. He had a dark face, an unprepossessing appearance, and a domineering defiance that wanted to trample all living beings under his feet. Who else could it be but Nitian Hanqing? Immediately after, more than 50 powerful commanders flew out from behind him. They were all decisive deities with a cultivation of level 3 heaven. They were the elites of Nitian Hanqing's army, the soul of the army. With them, Nitian Hanqing could immediately restore his strength and rebuild the iron-blooded army after recruiting 5 million troops. As long as they were not dead, this battle could not be considered a complete victory. However, the two were separated by countless mountains and rivers, and they might not be able to catch up even if they wanted to escape. Even if they could catch up, how many of them could the wizard tribe, which had suffered heavy casualties, stop them? Nitian Hanqing breathed heavily, his face pale, and his whole body was surrounded by a strong defiance that was almost tangible. The strength of the defiance was beyond the past, unprecedentedly powerful. Despite his exhaustion, his face was overflowing with surprise, and he could not help but look up and laugh. Suyu, you wanted to put me to death and put me in a desperate situation, but you let my defiance break through the shackles for a long time. As long as I rest in peace for half a month, I can step into the realm of level 2 deities. At that time, Suyu, wait for me to take your life." Although he had lost 5 million troops, he had unexpectedly gained a surge in the defiance, which was a blessing for him. The generals could not help but feel a chill in their hearts. Only they had escaped from the crack, but the soldiers they had brought out over the years had stayed inside forever. At this moment, what Nitian Hanqing cared about was not them, but the advancement of his own cultivation. Was it really worth it for them to risk their lives for the heaven-defying empire? Many generals had questions in their minds. Let's go, rebuild the army, and come back to Shun capital. Next time, I will kill them all with my own hands. Nitian Hanqing looked up and laughed as he led the crowd away. However, at this moment, the yin and yang of heaven and earth suddenly became chaotic, and a young man with a pair of black and white wings on his back appeared in front of everyone with his arms crossed. Suyu. Many of the generals were startled. They had never expected that Suyu would come before so many of them alone. Even Nitian Hanqing was stunned, but he immediately sneered. "Don't talk nonsense with him. Kill him immediately." After seeing Suyu's plan, Nitian Hanqing finally believed that he was a formidable enemy with endless means. He did not want to give Suyu any chance. Suyu looked indifferent and said calmly, "Generals, are you still willing to listen to such a commander?" Nitian Hanqing's eyes darkened, and he shouted, "Generals, listen to my orders. Do not listen to this person's words. He will be killed, and those who disobey will be severely punished." The majesty of the past was still there. As soon as Nitian Hanqing gave the order, they, as soldiers, instinctively attacked Suyu. There were 50 people, and if they attacked together, even the emperors of the 4 great empires might not be able to withstand it. "You are all defeated generals, and you all know what will happen to you. Even so, are you still willing to listen to his orders?" Su Yu was calm and composed, and his words penetrated the deepest worries in their hearts. Yes, they were defeated in this battle. Tens of millions of soldiers were buried in foreign lands, setting an unprecedented casualty record for the heaven-defying empire. Such a major failure would surely be blamed by the monarch. With such a responsibility, how could the people's anger be quelled without the death of the previous generals? How could the morale of the army be stabilized? Coupled with Nitian Hanqing's ruthlessness and lack of mercy, this matter would undoubtedly happen. Any trusted aide around him could suffer the fate of death. Nitian Hanqing's expression softened, and he no longer had his previous arrogance. He said, "Generals, rest assured that I will protect you in front of my father and will not make things difficult for you." Strangely, his promise did not convince the generals, but made them even more cautious. They stopped one after another and looked at each other. Nitian Hanqing's heart skipped a beat, and he sincerely said, "Generals, do you not even believe in my promise?" They were still standing in the same place, exchanging glances with each other, as if they were discussing. At this time, Su Yu said leisurely, "Do you think a rebel who will perish if he refuses to obey you will yield to you?" The generals, who were already suspicious, became even more hesitant. They knew Nitian Hanqing's character better than anyone else. Not to mention the fact that they were guilty of a major defeat, their hesitant behavior now would surely lead to a reckoning with them later. "Don't worry, I will not make things difficult for you," Nitian Hanqing said hurriedly. But the more he did so, the more uneasy the generals became. Rebels never gave in, never backed down, and Nitian Hanqing would not. There was no doubt that in Nitian Hanqing's heart he had already sentenced them to death. At this time, Su Yu said in a seductive tone, "Generals, Nitian Hanqing treats everyone leniently, but he treats everyone strictly. The biggest mistake you have made is a fatal disaster. But he has sacrificed millions of troops, and he doesn't care. Dare I ask, is such a commander still worth following? Even if he does not pursue the matter of this defeat, what about in the future? Who can guarantee that they can live peacefully under his hands forever? You will definitely die when you return this time. Why not take this opportunity to leave Nitian Hanqing and choose another master?" Chapter 1454. I'm just stating the facts, and I didn't add any embellishments. I'm sure all of you know what's true and what's false, Su Yu said. "Generals, if you don't mind, you can join me." As he spoke, Su Yu waved his sleeves, and a prepared video floated in the sky. In the video, the former traitor of the god realm, Guocheng, General Bai, and a group of soldiers, accompanied by Wang Qingchen, were enjoying all kinds of good wine, food, and beautiful women in the city. They were accompanied by the heir of the Wang family, Wang Qingchen. The wizard tribesmen in the city gave them face and did not discriminate. Not only did the two of them get beautiful women, but they also got a mansion and were even put in important positions. In the battle at the western city gate, it was the two of them who made great contributions. Su Yu wasn't wary of them in the slightest. This was the difficult task that Su Yu had given them, to enjoy to their heart's content. Let them be a living example to attract the enemy to surrender. As a human, as a former member of the God Realm, I don't want to say that all creatures in the world are originally a family. The wizard tribe is the wizard tribe, and the God Realm is the God Realm. There is a natural difference between races. It is reasonable that you don't trust the wizard tribe, but can you trust me? So you said, "I don't think I am a good person, but I have never killed innocent people, and I have never treated any of my subordinates harshly. Under my command, at least you don't have to worry about me being moody. At least you don't have to worry about losing your life if you make the slightest mistake. At least you don't have to worry about whether you will still be alive tomorrow. I don't give you much, but these are things that Nitian Hanqing can't give you." These words deeply touched their hearts. They had the intention to leave Nitian Hanqing and avoid this disaster. The problem was, where should they go after escaping? Would the other 3 empires dare to take them in? Nitian Hanqing even dared to steal the princess of the Empire of Darkness and the Taiqing Empire. How difficult would it be to send someone to kill them? The world was so big, and the only place that could accommodate them was one place, the Lost Nation. And in the Lost Nation, the only one that they could trust was their former enemy, Su Yu. If there was anyone who had such courage and strength to protect them, it could only be Su Yu. After a long internal struggle, someone finally took a step forward. Su Yu had a slight impression of this person. He was also one of the defending generals who had besieged the Blackwood Forest's outpost. He had captured the saint, Zhao Tianyin, and made a great contribution. At this moment he made a decision first. He took a step forward, and his figure disappeared as he appeared beside Su Yu. He cupped his fists at Nitian Hanqing. I'm sorry. Nitian Hanqing's eyes were filled with murderous intent. Nan Huai, you damn traitor! Nan Huai said faintly, It's better to be a traitor than to be punished without reward. To think that I captured Holy Son Zhao Tianyin alive, yet I didn't receive any rewards. If I make a mistake, I'm sure I'll immediately incur a fatal disaster, right? Zhao Tianyin said indifferently. Being mean and ungrateful was the most disappointing thing about Nitian Hanqing. Shua, another level 3 general, suddenly walked out and came to Su Yu's side. He saluted Nitian Hanqing with cupped fists. It's you. Nitian Hanqing recognized that this was the general responsible for transporting the bride, Li Exan. Li Exan, Nan Huai's betrayal is one thing, but I've never been harsh on you. Nitian Hanqing said angrily. Li Exan was a female general, and she said lightly, Maybe you've forgotten the soldiers who escorted Xue Xiaoman that were executed by you? Do you know that my parents were among them? Nitian Hanqing was stunned. The soldiers who escorted Xue Xiaoman either did not return or got lost in the Blackwood Forest. Those who returned were executed by Nitian Hanqing. It didn't matter if they were his trusted aides or not. Shua, 2 more generals chose to leave and stood on the opposite side. Ha ha ha. Why are you doing this? Could it be that I killed your parents too, or that I won't be rewarded? Nitian Hanqing laughed angrily. The 2 of them looked at each other and said, We won't go so far as to kill our parents, but old Huang is our best friend. He didn't die in the hands of Handsome Su, but in your hands. We just don't want to follow in his footsteps. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The strongest fortress was always breached from the inside. The betrayal of the 4 was like a breach in a dam that was filled with water. More and more generals, after careful consideration, made a wise choice. Following Nitian Hanqing would only lead to death. If they didn't die in the hands of the enemy, they would die in his hands. Why not choose another master? In particular, Nitian Hanqing was no longer as majestic as he used to be. Now he was like a stray dog. If they didn't leave now, when would they? 50 level 3 deities accounted for 30% of the strong men of the heaven-defying empire. 40 of them chose to side with Su Yu and stood with him, coldly confronting Nitian Hanqing. Su Yu looked around at the generals who stood firmly behind Nitian Hanqing and said indifferently, Are you sure you want to follow such a commander? You only have one chance. There was no doubt that he would not let Nitian Hanqing escape, let alone those who were related to him. Nitian Hanqing shouted coldly, That's enough! Those traitors, you can take them in if you want. If they can betray me today, they can betray you tomorrow. Keep such weak-minded people for yourself. I don't care about them. Only the loyal generals who follow me firmly deserve to be cultivated by me. Poof! However, at that moment, a black dagger with a dark luster suddenly pierced through Nitian Hanqing's chest. The owner of the black dagger was Nitian Hanqing's confidant, his most trusted confidant, and a supporter who had always stood by his side. The cold edge of the blade and the excruciating poison stimulated Nitian Hanqing. He turned his head and stared at his confidant, with black blood at the corner of his mouth. he said in a low voice. Why? Pangdu, you are my brother who grew up with me, and I personally guided you in your training. I thought you were the only one who would not betray me. The many deities who had already sided with Su Yu were also surprised. If anyone among them was Nitian Hanqing's confidant, then Pang Du was the most confidant of all. When he was young, he was selected from countless children with amazing potential by the empire to accompany the prince as he grew up. It was not an exaggeration to say that they were brothers. His betrayal was the most surprising. Pang Du's face was fair and looked very gentle, but at the moment there was a hint of savagery and pleasure on his face. He said in a hoarse voice, "Brother, when you took my woman and forced me to give up, did you ever treat me as a brother? In your eyes, there was only yourself and no one else." Even the person he trusted the most chose to betray him. At this moment, Nitian Hanqing was deserted by his own people. "So, Nitian Hanqing, you deserve to die." Pang Du let out a venomous laugh. With a flip of his palm, the dagger twisted the heart. However, Nitian Hanqing did not die. His face was gloomy, and his murderous intent erupted. "No matter what, those who betray me must die." From his chest, a dark red energy burst out and instantly melted the dagger. At the same time, it gushed out along the wound and sprayed all over Pang Du's upper body. A shocking scene appeared. Pang Du's upper body was instantly evaporated into nothingness by the dark red energy, and he died on the spot. His death quickly changed the minds of those supporters who had been determined to follow Nitian Hanqing. This person could not be followed. In the end, the remaining 9 people also chose to side with Su Yu. Nitian Hanqing had really become a loner. He alone had to face the 50 generals of the past, as well as a lifelong enemy. His palm touched his chest, and the wound healed automatically. A dark red heart that was different from that of ordinary people could be vaguely seen. It was filled with the blood of the heaven-defying divine warrior. With this heart, it could ensure that he was immortal, and it could also kill people, such as Pang Du, who was careless. Nitian Hanqing looked coldly at the people on the other side of the river, and with a fierce look he memorized their faces one by one. "Those who betray me will be killed without mercy, whether you go to the ends of the earth or escape to the heavens or the earth. I swear that I will use all my strength to kill you one by one in this lifetime, including your 9 clans. I will kill you one by one, leaving no one alive." As his voice fell, it turned into a strange and obscure wave that surged into the heavens and the earth. This was the vow of the Defying Will. Once the vow was made, it would be integrated into the Defying Divine path. As long as it was not achieved, the Defying Will would not be smooth. For Nitian Hanqing, this was definitely the most resolute vow. He was only one person, but his words caused the faces of the 50 people to change. They knew the meaning of his words, and they knew that Nitian Hanqing would definitely do this. "What are you waiting for?" "Su Yu said lightly, waiting for your 9 clans to be destroyed, or waiting for him to escape this disaster and come back to seek revenge on you one by one." When everyone heard this, their hearts trembled. Yes, there was no turning back now that they had come this far. As long as Nitian Hanqing did not die, they would never be at peace. "Kill! Kill the tyrant!" Everyone rose up and charged towards Nitian Hanqing. Nitian Hanqing looked up and laughed. "You can't keep me here. Remember what I said, I will come back." Swish! He took out a fan, and the moment he opened it, an even more terrible Defying Will gushed out from the fan. That was Nitian Guyun's Defying Will. The Defying Will turned into a boundless giant palm, slapping towards the crowd with great destructive power. Everyone was shocked and could not dodge in time, especially the person who rushed at the front, who was about to be killed by the palm. However, at that instant, a cold harumph could be heard from behind them. Following this, an overwhelming battle intent was born. A divine weapon shaped like any weapon in the world, bursting with a sharp edge, pointed directly at the giant palm formed by the Defying Will. The 2 sides collided violently. Although the giant palm of the Defying Will was powerful, the divine weapon was indomitable and stronger. After several confrontations, Su Yu's fighting spirit exceeded the limit and destroyed the giant palm that contained Nitian Guyun's attack. As the giant palm was destroyed, there was only a muffled groan. Nitian Hanqing was covered in blood and turned into starlight that dissipated. He did not die, but escaped with injuries. The starlight contained the breath of the heaven-defying divine blood. He must have used the treasure of the royal family to escape. Su Yu transformed from the state of the divine weapon into a human figure. Carefully perceiving, he could no longer sense his existence. This was considered a head-on fight between them, and the result was Nitian Hanqing escaping with injuries. Su Yu frowned deeply. This time, Nitian Hanqing did not die. In half a month, he would definitely break through the shackles and reach level 2. When that time came, the threat would increase several times. Chapter 1455. Behind him, the generals kept quiet out of fear. Su Yu had just defeated Nitian Guyun's attack. What did this mean? He had the power to fight a level 2 deity. Some who were hesitant made up their minds. In this world, there might be a few people who could fight against Nitian Hanqing, but Su Yu was the only one who was willing to protect them. "Greetings, Commander Su. We are willing to serve you." The group exchanged glances and knelt on one knee in unison. Su Yu waved his hand, and a gentle force lifted them up. He said, "Since you are following me, there is no need for the previous formalities. I am not Nitian Hanqing, and I do not need you to be respectful to me." Although they did not say anything, there was an inexplicable sense of relief in their hearts. "Now, I have 2 orders for you. First, you immediately return to the heaven-defying empire. If you have relatives and friends, you can move them to Shun capital." Everyone was filled with emotion. After being summoned, the first task they received was not to kill the enemy, but to rescue their relatives and friends. Compared to Nitian Hanqing, they could not help but feel relieved. Perhaps they should have left Nitian Hanqing long ago. Second, after you return to the Empire, if you can convince your classmates and friends to work for me in secret, it will be better. If you make a contribution, you will be rewarded, but do not expose yourself. As he spoke, Su Yu took out a pile of extremely rare and precious resources from Chulong's space ring, which had an unexpected effect on level 3 deities. When everyone saw it, their faces changed. They had worked hard in the God realm for 10 years, but they might not be able to get so many resources. Under my command, rewards and punishments are clear. You can go and do it immediately. The crowd was grateful and rushed back to the Empire to rescue their relatives and friends. The remaining 7 or 8 had no attachments in the Empire, so they followed Su Yu back to the ruined Shun capital. On the city wall, the people of the wizard tribe had already welcomed Su Yu's return. In this battle, Su Yu had played a role in turning the tide. If anyone else in the city had been the commander, it would have been impossible to achieve the final victory. Not even the Wang clan master himself. Su Yu pressed his hand down, motioning for them to be quiet, and said, "Now it is time to invite the 3 seniors, and the traitor hiding among us." Hearing the word traitor, all the sorcerers in the city hated him. It was the help of a traitor that allowed them to secretly release Admiral Whitebone and the others, nearly causing a huge disaster. Fortunately, Su Yu had predicted the enemy's movements and made arrangements in advance. Otherwise, the consequences would have been unimaginable. The 8 commanders were also brimming with murderous intent, and under Su Yu's lead, they headed straight for the Great Hall. There was a special divine statue shielding the outside of the main hall, causing the people inside to be unable to sense the outside world, let alone know what was going on outside. The Lord of the Holy Saint Temple said solemnly, "It's been 6 days and 6 nights. Could it be that Su Yu is at a disadvantage? I think it's necessary to change the commander. If not, we can go out and take a look ourselves." In fact, the people in the hall could not keep their cool either. Whether it was the Wang clan leader, the mistress of the greatest Saint Lady Temple, or the saint and Kalin. It would be a lie to say that they were not worried about the outcome of this battle. They also wanted to take a look at the situation in the outside world, but they still restrained themselves. The mistress of the greatest saint, Lady Temple, said, "No," precisely because there was no movement for 6 days and 6 nights. It meant that the situation was good. Either the enemy has not arrived yet, or they are still resisting. It is at least several times better than Fan capital being conquered in a short period of time. These words had some calming effect. Indeed, no news was good news. As for changing the commander at the last minute, this is a military taboo. How could the Lord of the Holy Saint Temple not know about it? The mistress of the greatest saint, Lady Temple, said meaningfully, "As for going out and taking a look, have you forgotten why we are gathered here? It is to prevent the news from leaking out." When everyone heard this, they were all suspicious of the Lord of the Holy Saint Temple. If someone said at this moment that he was a spy, perhaps half of them would believe it. The other half did not believe it because of his identity. The Lord of the Holy Saint Temple was second only to the Moonwatch sect master. The Lord of the Holy Saint Temple did not change his expression and reprimanded, "I am just concerned about the situation of the wizard tribe, and I am confused. Are you questioning me?" To be honest, there were many doubters. Even the Wong clan master, the mistress of the greatest saint, Lady Temple, and even Ling Wu were highly suspicious. How could a person in a high position say all kinds of unreasonable things at a time of difficulty without any problems? However, there was no evidence. The other party was the dignified Lord of the Holy Saint Temple. Even if they suspected him, they could not do anything to him, unless they found concrete evidence. At this moment, the isolation barrier outside the door was broken by a violent force. The faces of the people in the temple changed slightly. There was only one group of people who dared to use brute force to damage the barrier. The enemy. Boom! With a roar, the isolation barrier was destroyed. A group of people broke in. The leader was none other than Admiral Whitebone, who was supposed to be trapped in the cage. Behind Admiral Whitebone, there were more than a dozen level 3 deities, all dressed in the uniforms of the heaven-defying Empire's generals. With so many enemies suddenly rushing in, no matter how stupid they were, they knew that Shengjing City had fallen. As soon as Admiral Whitebone entered the temple, he immediately cupped his hands to the Lord of the Holy Saint Temple and said, "Lord of the Holy Saint Temple, the prince has succeeded in his mission. Thank you for your help, and the prince will definitely reward you handsomely." The Lord of the Holy Saint Temple's face changed, and he shouted in a deep voice, "God Realm rebels, what nonsense are you talking about? When did I help you? The city has fallen, and the people are dead. Don't you dare to hurt the wizard tribe again. Take this." With a loud shout, the Lord of the Holy Saint Temple immediately rushed over, casting a powerful spell, and went straight for Admiral Whitebone. Such fearlessness of death and unyielding character was truly admirable. However, halfway through, he suddenly stopped and sped up to Admiral Whitebone's side. The anger on his face disappeared and was replaced with joy. "Thank you, Admiral Whitebone, for leading the troops personally. May I ask if the prince has mentioned the position of cult master?" Admiral Whitebone nodded. "Of course I have. If the Moonview sect leader is destroyed, I will make you the new Moonview sect leader." Hearing this, the Lord of the Holy Saint Temple was overjoyed. He could not help but laugh. "Ha ha ha! It was not in vain that I helped you so many times in secret. Please tell the prince that if the Saint Capital also needs help, I am willing to be at your service." His fearless words shocked everyone in the temple. The Wong clan master's expression changed. "Lord of the Holy Saint Temple, you really betrayed the wizard tribe and went to the God realm." The Lord of the Holy Saint Temple sneered. "What betrayal? I was just thinking for myself. Am I supposed to just wait for my death?" "You coward!" the Wong clan master scolded. The Lord of the Holy Saint Temple sneered. "A group of ignorant people. You have been in the Black Forest all year round and have no idea of the horrors of the God Realm. Their ancestors were the 9 emperors, and they left behind many terrible weapons of civilization. We have no chance of winning. The mistress of the greatest saint Lady Temple scolded. Stop hiding your ambition. You are doing this for the position of sect leader. The Lord of the Holy Saint Temple did not shy away. He said, Why can't I be the sect leader? Why can I only train those juniors to be sect leaders, but I cannot be the sect leader? This is not fair. These remarks undoubtedly angered the crowd. The sect leader had chosen the rules and inherited them from the wizard ancestor. As the Lord of the Holy Saint Temple, his words had undoubtedly subverted the wizard ancestor's rules and provoked a wave of anger. Angry curses and accusations filled the temple. The Lord of the Holy Saint Temple's expression did not change. He laughed and said, Curse all you want, a group of losers. Now that Shun capital has been destroyed and the God Realm army has occupied it, all of you will die. Don't even think about living. The Wang clan master, the mistress of the greatest saint Lady Temple, and Lingwu looked at each other and released powerful sorcery. Many of the juniors in the temple were also bursting with unyielding fighting spirit. Although they were going to die, they were not willing to surrender. Is there any use in resisting? If it is, Suyu, who claimed to be able to protect the safety of Shun capital, will still be defeated in the end? The Lord of the Holy Saint Temple shook his head and sighed. Accept your fate. The power of the God Realm is beyond your imagination. However, their auras did not weaken. Instead, they grew stronger. You shameless bastard, we may not be able to kill others, but we are more than enough to destroy you. The Wang clan master knew that the situation was hopeless and that there was no room for negotiation. He was prepared to kill this traitor with his life. The Lord of the Holy Saint Temple was fearless and laughed. Kill me? Why don't you take a look at who is standing behind me? However, just as he finished speaking, the voice of Admiral Whitebone behind him suddenly changed. It was a voice that the Lord of the Holy Saint Temple was very familiar with. Oh, I feel that you should be the one to see exactly who is standing behind you. The eerie voice made the Lord of the Holy Saint Temple stiffen. He turned his head and his heart skipped a beat. He cried out, It's you? Suyu, you are not Admiral Whitebone. Suyu's body rippled with a layer of divine light. The form of Admiral Whitebone faded away and was replaced by Suyu. The Lord of the Holy Saint Temple's heart trembled. He hurriedly flew towards the other God Realm generals and said, He is Suyu, the commander of the enemy. He is now pretending to be Admiral Whitebone. You must arrest him quickly. However, the dozen generals were indifferent and looked at him with pity in their eyes. Noticing their strange behavior, the Lord of the Holy Saint Temple's face gradually fell. You are also pretending to be the God Realm generals. Nan Huai said mockingly, We are the real deal. However, we are no longer working for Nitian Hanqing, but for Handsome Su. Thud, thud, thud. The Lord of the Holy Saint Temple staggered a few times and fell to the ground. He stared at Suyu in disbelief. How did you do it? How could they surrender to you? Suyu said, It's very simple. Nitian Hanqing was defeated, and they have been loyal to me ever since. What? The God Realm army was defeated? The war was over? The Lord of the Holy Saint Temple could not believe it. He stammered, How could you defeat them? In his memory, the God Realm army was an invincible existence. The wizard tribe was destined to be destroyed by the heaven-defying empire. Suyu said, People like you will never understand what a miracle is. Lock him up. If he dares to move, kill him, Suyu ordered indifferently. The God Realm generals behind him immediately stepped forward and firmly restrained him. The Lord of the Holy Saint Temple finally reacted. Wait, let me know before I die. You were pretending to be Admiral Whitebone just now to test me? Suyu nodded nonchalantly. Impossible. There are so many people in the temple. How can you be sure that I am the traitor? Is it because we are not on good terms?